All right, good morning, everybody. This is the Wednesday, July 12th morning session of the Portland City Council. Welcome, everybody. Sue, could you please call the roll?
Saltzman.
Here.
Udaly.
Here.
Fritz.
Here.
Fish. Wheeler.
Here. The purpose of council meetings is to do the city's business, including hearing from the community on issues of concern. In order for us to hear everyone and give everybody consideration of their matters before the Portland City Council, we must all endeavor to preserve order and decorum at these meetings. To make sure that the process is clear for everybody, I just want to review a couple of the basic rules and guidelines, which I hope will help everybody feel comfortable, heard, and respected, and to also maintain decorum in the council chamber. There's two opportunities for public participation, if you so choose. First, we have an opportunity for people to sign up in advance and speak briefly on any subject for which they'd like to speak on. Second of all, people are allowed to sign up for public testimony on first readings of reports, resolutions, and ordinances. If you sign up, just to be clear, your testimony has to actually be relevant to the issue being discussed. Please state your name for the record. We don't need your address. If you're a lobbyist, we do require that you disclose that. If you're here representing an organization, it would be helpful to know that as well. Typically, people have up to 3 minutes to testify. Sometimes we have to change that due to time constraints. When you have 30 seconds left, the yellow light is going to light up on that little box in front of you. When your time is up, you're going to hear lots of annoying beeps. You'll know when your time is up. People who conduct that disrupts the meeting, for example, shouting or interrupting other people's testimony or interrupting council deliberations is not allowed. People who disrupt the meeting face ejection from the meeting. If there is a disruption, I will issue a warning that if any further disruption occurs, you could be asked to leave. If you are asked to leave and you choose not to do so, you're subject to arrest for trespassing. If people would like to show their support for what's being said, feel free to do a thumbs up or Sarah's got it right. What do you call that?
Twinkle fingers.
Twinkle fingers. Jazz hands. That works well. If you want to show your displeasure with me or anybody else, thumbs down is fine. Sarah's demonstrating again. Thank you. So with that, we will get to the first issue at hand, and that is communication. Susan, if you could call the first item up, please.
Item 782, request of Boo Rigney to address council regarding issues with transients along Hawthorne Boulevard.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Seven 783 and 784 are with her. I'll read those also.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
783, request of John Light to address council regarding problem behaviors in Southeast Hawthorne area. 784, request of Sarah Balzer to address council regarding transients along Hawthorne Boulevard.
Thank you and good morning.
Good morning. I'm Boo Rigney, and I own a business on Hawthorne Boulevard. We're here today because we feel that we are under siege due to bad behaviors of individuals hanging out on our private properties and public sidewalks. We need more help from the Portland City government and police. I'd like to ask for a quick show of hands for those in the audience that are here today from our neighborhood. And also, is the slideshow, Sue, running on the screen? Thank you. I'm going to start with a brief video that will give you a good feel of what we deal with.
You're lucky you're not getting a beer from that.
I might add this video is being taken by my friend here, Sarah Balzer, who was pregnant at the time.
Bitch in the house!
So what we're here to really describe to you, what we're coping with mainly are the bad behaviors. People are openly drinking alcohol, taking drugs, smoking marijuana, blocking sidewalks for pedestrians, lying on our businesses' doorways and residents and behaving aggressively when asked to move along, defecating and leaving trash behind on our properties. We as a group have come together quite a bit already to work together. We paid for private security. We're spending over $20,000 in 2017. Many individual businesses are also contributing and paying their own cleanup and security. We are constantly trying to get with Central Precinct and commissioners and the mayor's office as well to have smaller meetings. As an example, I would like to state I just represent Ben & Jerry's. I own the Ben & Jerry's. I could be any business in many neighborhoods across the city. We're down $32,000 in 2016 over 2015 from this kind of behavior. And this year we expect to be down $60,000. Now this means that it affects our employees, and most of our employees being very young kids. And the residents here too believe that they're losing the walkability and the livability of their properties, and the values are clearly going down. Our main message is that our community and others around the city are becoming too dangerous and unpredictable to safely live in and run our businesses. We don't feel safe. City leaders and bureaus need to step up staffing and coordination in order to respond to the increase of bad behaviors of people in these public spaces. What we're asking for specifically is to get back the police walking patrols immediately. We're suffering right now this year, tomorrow. And we're also looking forward to a bigger plan to fast-track recruitment of new police officers and other communities outreach personnel who can have a daily presence with those folks out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Good morning.
Good morning. Hello, City Council board members. Thank you for letting us be here today. My name is Sarah Balzer. I own a business at 35th and Hawthorne. I'm a board member of the Hawthorne Boulevard Business Association and am a homeowner in the Richmond neighborhood. Imagine walking down Hawthorne and you hear something from behind you. You see what looks like a gang of people ages 16 through 30 on the side of the street, and now you can make out what they're saying. Hey, yeah, you, cunt bitch, give me your money. Hey, you bitch, I know you have money. I take a photo and then they yell, I'm gonna follow you home and beat you up. Better watch out, bitch. This was just 2 months ago when I was 7 months pregnant. Local businesses and employees have been threatened they're going to be raped by these individuals. They've witnessed them shooting up in the bushes, getting in knife fights, defecating on the sidewalk, yelling at senior citizens walking by, and yelling at children. Our safety is at risk. As at serious risk, and no one seems to be taking it seriously except for us. Back in 2013, a group of home and business owners got together and formed the Hawthorne Neighborhood Coalition. We brought these exact same issues to City Council, and they answered our pleas. They gave us a police walking patrol that split their days between downtown Portland and Hawthorne in the beginning of 2014, and guess what? It worked, and it worked really, really well. You didn't find one complaint on the boulevard. Everyone loved it. The walking police themselves, the business owners, the homeowners, tourists, and the individuals behaving badly. Police only wrote 24 citations that year, and everyone behaved themselves. It lasted through 2015 with a few cuts here and there, but kept working all the way until the leading officer of the patrol was honored by Vice President Joe Biden at the White House for how well it had worked. Then 4 months after he was honored, the program was cut. 2016 came and saw the bad behavior starting to trickle back in. 2017 hit, and we had break-in after break-in up and down Hawthorne, window smashing after window smashing, and sure enough, the bad behavior was back. Hawthorne businesses banded together, took money out of their own pockets, and hired a security patrol. But here's the thing, they're not police. They can't write tickets. So although they may make a dent, they're nowhere near as effective as an actual police officer. And until the police actually start writing tickets for these crimes, because as of right now they are not, the individuals breaking the law will have complete reign over Hawthorne. And we're officially out of options. We removed bike overhangs, removed bushes, watered down sidewalks, hired day and night security, met with local police and organizers, and yet still these individuals take advantage of our neighborhood. We're here to beg you to do something. Act, save Hawthorne, save your small businesses that support the Portland community, save the neighborhoods that support your local schools, because it's only going to get worse if we've seen in the past. Here's a folder, I believe they've already passed them out to you, of letters written by local residents and businesses and employees describing how they've witnessed threats. You need to read all of these. They are extremely shocking, more shocking than what I just read to you. Also in that folder is a letter of support from the Hawthorne Business Bureau Association for an actual police walking patrol. We came here asking for help and are providing real solutions that history has proven recently have worked. Please don't pass up this opportunity to help our community.
Thank you, appreciate it. Good morning, sir.
Hello, my name is John Light, and I live in the Hawthorne neighborhood near Southeast Hawthorne and 36th Street. This vibrant commercial and residential area has both a recent and longer history of public health and safety issues, as I think my neighbors here have demonstrated. From a resident's perspective, our neighborhood, like others around the city, is becoming too dangerous and unpredictable to safely live or run a business. People dread coming to work, residents don't feel safe, and their children are at risk. Businesses are losing money, and property values are being affected. Hawthorne residents and business people have come here today to say it's time for a new approach to address these problems realistically and resolutely. For starters, this approach would not blame the victims. We've been tutored on using 911 and police non-emergency, and there's now even a website for reporting anti-neighborhood activity. Yet our experience is we're usually on our own. Calls to non-emergency go unanswered, 911 calls draw inconsistent response and seldom lead to effective action, and other reporting methods are widely understood to be useless. Further, we are advised not to intervene ourselves for fear of reprisals. We cannot blame our police either. There are simply too few of them to do the job properly. This new approach we imagine might instead accept from the outset that our community problems are both difficult and real, requiring systematic, concerted, planned effort. Portland prides itself as a city that can do what other cities cannot, and we have the transportation system, bike friendliness, and so much more to prove it. We can do this. While we're certainly not going to propose a full plan in a 3-minute talk, this plan will have several obvious features. One, it's going to cost money, but think of it as an investment in our city's future, one that, moreover, can generate a model for other cities to follow. 2, fast-track recruitment of new police officers and other community outreach personnel who can have an immediate impact in our neighborhood and others. 3, move quickly to create at least temporary shelter and facilities available to anyone and make clear that they're to be used and that camping in city neighborhoods and parks is not acceptable. 4, improve city contact methods once we have an adequate number of responders in place. And finally, establish a committee to coordinate neighborhood problems and their solutions across city departments. In conclusion, there is no more fundamental goal of city government than supporting its communities and neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you. And since you have all three come to speak on this subject and you brought a lot of people, I will take the liberty of making a couple of comments. I don't typically do that because this is your time, but out of respect for your questions. Number one, I understand you are meeting with my staff soon, is that correct? Good, so I'll look forward to your full set of proposals, and I appreciate not just complaining about the issue, but also coming forth with some concrete suggestions in terms of how we can address it. Number two, I completely understand and empathize with the concerns that you have raised. And the budget that we just passed reflects that concern. We are being compassionate with regard to our response to homelessness. We significantly increased resources for intervention, for housing support, mental health and drug and alcohol addiction issues. But we also significantly increased the resources going towards what I would describe as livability issues, trash, litter, needle collection. As mayor and police commissioner, I have directed that we enforce local codes with regard to the sidewalks and with regard to the parks. We increase the number of park rangers available in the parks. And the way I see it is a balancing act. On one hand, we should be compassionate towards those who truly do need our help on the mental health side, on the addiction side, employment, rent support, whatever it takes to help get people off the street and keep them off the street. on the other hand, we have to enforce community expectations, standards, and the law. And I've made it very clear as the police commissioner that we will do that under my watch. Now, that being said, I also
Mr. Mayor, may I just quickly say,
Certainly.
we agree with everything you've said.
Great.
And all of our discussions, basically, you're rephrasing what we
Good. So
advocate and we're saying.
here's what I'm asking for. Number one, we will work with you on these issues. But number two, please understand this, as you said, sir, it is a very complex issue. It is a multifaceted issue, and there is no quick, easy solution. These are very serious societal problems. And I own, and we collectively own, the issues in our own community. But understand there are broader forces at work here: economic, addiction, mental health services,
A walking
et cetera.
patrol would be an immediate.
And I support that. And to be clear, not only does this budget that we just passed support that, I've made it very, very clear that we will return to a full community policing model in this community, both to reduce crime and rebuild and repair that trust between our police bureau and the community that we serve. So I thank you for being here. Thank you for your forbearance and your understanding as we work together to address this issue. Thanks
Looking
for
forward
your
to it, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Next item, please, Sue.
Item 785, request of Catherine Smith to address council regarding have the Portland Police investigate the Tigard Police. Catherine, are you here?
I don't think I saw her this morning. Next item, please.
786, request of Sarah Hobbs to address council regarding suicide issues in the city.
Good morning,
I
sir.
have an extra minute or two if I need it. Between coming from home to here, my notebook was stolen, which means all the information I had planned on giving you all is now gone. I will bring that by to your offices sometime either tomorrow or Friday.
Sorry to hear that. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I'm pretty upset at the moment. For the record, my name is Sarah Hobbs, and I am here today officially as an advocate for the Oregon State Chapter of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. As we look at the issues of suicide, both in the state of Oregon and the city of Portland, the statistics are very sobering. Statewide, suicide is the second leading cause of death, ages 15 to 34. Third leading cause of death, ages 10 to 14, 35 to 44. Fifth leading cause of death, ages 45 to 54. Seventh leading cause of death, ages 55 to 64. 14th leading cause of death, 65 and older. 5 times as many people died due to suicide statewide than the homicide. And the state is 13 out of all 50 states in the nation for its extreme rate of suicide. Portland, as a city of all the cities in the nation, has historically been within the top 20. Contrary to popular belief, it is not due to our weather. Suicide goes up within the city late spring, early summer, with the biggest spike seen in the month of June. In 2015, the Portland Police Bureau's Enhanced Crisis Intervention Team responded to 1,200 suicide crisis calls just in 2015 alone. 6 of those calls they deemed such extreme risk that they deferred them to the crisis negotiation team. One of those calls involved a suicidal man with a firearm. It was a call at Good Samaritan Hospital. I am very painfully aware of this call because it happened directly across the street from where I live. The past 30 years, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention has been the leading non-governmental organization addressing the issue of suicide, suicide prevention, suicide research. Our big fundraising event is our Out of the Darkness Walk, which is held this year, October 7th. I know you all said that you needed a formal invitation. Well, unfortunately, those invitations went missing. My notebook got stolen, but I can bring them to you. In 2016, the foundation awarded $1.4 million for suicide prevention research. We were very excited that out of 17 funded grants, one of those went to OHSU to fund a research study that was done in conjunction with the VA to better identify Iraq and Afghanistan combat veterans who are at risk for suicide. So some of those funds are even coming local. I will bring the invitations and the information. I left the one little basic information card that I still had on me. I will bring those to your office. I look forward to having you all join us on our walk October 7th, which will be from 10 to noon, starting and finishing at the Veterans Memorial Coliseum. And
Thank you, sir.
I'm just stressed. I really am not happy. I really was hoping to have that information to present to you, but I
No
will
worries.
bring-
We'll look forward to getting that at a later time. Thank
All
you
right.
so much. Appreciate it. So we're not yet at 10 o'clock. Do we have any items pulled from the consent agenda other than item 797?
No other items.
Please call the roll on the
787.
consent
What
agenda.
about 787?
I'm sorry, hang on, one sec.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's.
No, I'm sorry, that's-
Yeah, that's a time certain.
No, wait a minute. Well, no, 797 is the one. Yes, that's
Yeah,
it.
okay.
Sorry.
Please call the roll.
Salzman.
Aye.
Udaly.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Wheeler.
All right, consent agenda is adopted. Commissioner Fritz had requested pulling 797. Could you please read that?
797, accept and appropriate a grant in the amount of $20,000 from the Oregon Department of Education for expansion of the summer free-for-all lunch program.
Commissioner Fritz?
Thank you, Mayor. Colleagues, this is just a simple transcriptionist error that it references the financial year 16-17 budget and should reference the 17-18 budget. So I move that amendment.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Aye.
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 Aye, the ordinance is adopted.
That was on the amendment.
That's
so
the
no,
amendment.
Oh, I apologize. Thank you very much. Please, any further discussion on the main motion? Please call the roll.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, colleagues. Aye.
Fish. Wheeler.
Aye. The ordinance is adopted as amended. We have about 5 minutes, so why don't we go to the second readings, please, and get done with those. Item 803, please.
We're digging here. 803. Authorize intergovernmental agreement with Sound Transit for cooperative procurement of modern streetcars.
Any further discussion on item 803? Please call the roll.
Salzman.
Aye.
Udaly.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The agreement's approved. Please call item 804.
804, amend contract with TriMet related to development and funding of the Portland streetcar system and shared regional transit goals.
Any further discussion on this item? Please call the roll.
Salzman.
Aye.
Udaly.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. Contract's amended. Please call item 805.
805, amend the boundary of Southwest Dolph Court, Spring Garden Street, Local Improvement District to construct additional street, sidewalk, and stormwater improvements 111 feet west on Southwest Spring Garden Street, and create a new pending lien record for 3352 Southwest Spring Garden Street.
Any further discussion on this item? Please call the roll.
Salzman.
Aye.
Udaly.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. Please call item 806.
806, create a local improvement district to construct street, sidewalk, and stormwater improvements in the Northeast 27th Avenue and Holland Street Local Improvement District.
Colleagues, any further discussion on this issue? Please call the roll.
Salzman?
Aye.
Udaley?
Aye.
Fritz?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye, the LID is adopted. Please call item 807.
807, authorize a purchase order with Skeeter Brush Trucks LLC for the purchase of 3 wildland brush trucks for a total not to exceed amount of $700,000.
Colleagues, any further discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Salzman?
Aye.
Udaley?
Aye.
Fritz?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. The purchase order is accepted. Please call item 808.
And 808, have a request to continue that to July 20th. I'll read it, though. Authorize an intergovernmental agreement with Energy Northwest in the amount of $8 million for the operations and maintenance of Portland Hydroelectric Project.
So we've had a request to continue this to July 8th. Is that a morning session?
It'll be July 20th next week because of our, we need 4 members present.
Very good. So this will be moved to July 20th, and the time will be posted in the appropriate way?
Right, it'll be 2 o'clock.
Okay, at 2 p.m.?
Yeah.
Very good. Please call item 809, then we'll go back to the agenda.
Assess property for sidewalk repair for the Portland Bureau of Transportation.
Any further discussion on this? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Salzman?
Aye.
Udaley?
Aye.
Fritz?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye, the ordinance is adopted. We'll now go, looks like we're 10 o'clock on the button. We'll go back to the first time certain item, please, which is 787.
787, create a local improvement district to construct street, sidewalk, and stormwater improvements in the North Subtle Road Local Improvement District.
Commissioner Saltzman.
Thank you, Mayor. If council will recall, we began this process a couple of months ago and had a lively hearing on the idea of creating a local improvement district around the industrial area and heavily used unimproved road, North Subtle Road. In the intervening time, LID Administrator Andrew Abbey has been in close contact with many property owners and has continued to do what he does, which is bring private property owners and public agencies together to solve challenging transportation infrastructure issues. In that work, Andrew has learned quite a bit, and he is here to, first of all, we are going to ask that this be set over till August 25th, but we thought we would have Andrew, and we have Bill Ryan and Steve Townsend can give us an update on where we stand right now on that.
Thank you, Commissioner Saltzman. Andrew Abbey, Local Improvement District Administrator. Joining me today to my immediate left is Steve Townsend, the City Engineer and the Chief Engineer of PBOT, and Bill Ryan, the Chief Engineer of the Bureau of Environmental Services. We do not have a presentation today. As Commissioner Saltzman mentioned, we wanted to continue this item, just a slight date correction, August 23rd instead of August 25th.
Sorry.
So we wanted to go ahead and do that. I just wanted to give you a brief update that we do have a remonstrance level of 45.5% as reflected in Exhibit G of the ordinance. We have some additional written testimony that's also in Exhibit G. On June 30th, I had a very good conversation with Jim Brown, who represents several of the property owners, and we had a good discussion. And we felt that a good next step would be for me to attend a property owner meeting with the property owners on August 7th, and then for us to come back on August 23rd and then report out to council what the options are for proceeding from here. I think those, again, were very productive discussions. One of the things that we'll be discussing on August 7th is a pavement study that's been privately commissioned by the property owners, and also the possibility of local infiltration for stormwater. And so I just wanted to give Steve and Bill just a minute or so to just talk about what a pavement study is and the possibilities for infiltration, just on a very conceptual level so that you know what's coming back in August.
So my name is Steve Townsend. I'm Chief Engineer for Transportation, and I'll be joining Andrew at that meeting on August 7th with the property owners. And to give you a quick idea what the pavement design is we'd be doing is one of the things they'd proposed was 6 inches of asphalt out there. And one of the things that happens is, if you think about it, and I'm going to use this paper clip, I'm going high tech on you guys today. is that when the buses or a heavy load drives across the road, the bottom of the pavement wants to flex just a little bit if it's not thick enough. If it's thick enough, you could have your hand at the bottom of the asphalt or the concrete. The bus or truck could go over it, your hand wouldn't feel anything. If it's too thin, when that bus or truck goes over it, that asphalt or concrete wants to flex at the bottom. And if it flexes at the bottom, it starts to crack. And that crack, if it goes from the bottom up, means the pavement wasn't thick enough and it's a rebuild. There's nothing we can do. So what we do in our pavement studies is to make sure that when we build the pavement, it's thick enough so that any stresses it feels are only on the surface, so that any repairs we have to do are on the surface, and it keeps the long-term, short-term and long-term maintenance costs to a minimum. And so that's part of what would be going on this project, is to make sure that there'd be a pavement study and a pavement design to make sure that what is built out there will last. But it's also, they want folks to take a peek at what is out there to see if anything can be reused.
Thanks.
And I am Bill Ryan, Chief Engineer for the Bureau of Environmental Services. Andrew has included in the estimate for the LID what we looked at as being the most probable, most expensive approach to handling stormwater within the area. And that's appropriate until we get out there and we actually have the opportunity to review test results, to look at the presence of contamination in the soil and groundwater, to look at the, maybe do additional testing and do some preliminary design work. We won't know whether an infiltration system is affordable or even doable. So, but we will do that work. We will do the necessary work to find the most cost-effective means of managing stormwater within the LID.
And the same thing goes for the pavement. We've made the same thing, conservative assumptions based upon what we have for information in the area, but we do site-specific testing, and that would improve our estimate, so we feel comfortable going forward.
So I think that's all we wanted to share with you today. So we look forward to coming back on August 23rd at the 10 a.m. time certain. Happy to answer any additional questions council might have.
Thank you all.
Very good. Any further questions, colleagues? Any public testimony on this item?
That will be taken on August 23rd.
I'm sorry, on the 23rd. Thank you. Very good. Then, without further ado, this is a non-emergency first reading. Moves to second reading.
No,
Oh, it's still, it's a continuation, actually, isn't it?
Yeah.
Correctly. Okay, this is a continuation. Thank you. Sorry for that confusion. We cannot quite yet move to 788. Let's move to 801, please. Do we have somebody here to talk on item 801? Yes, good. Please read 801.
Item 801, apply for and accept a grant in the amount of $445,680 from the Oregon Department of Transportation and appropriate $225,000 for reimbursement for the 2017-19 Work Zone Enforcement Program grant.
Good morning. Thanks
Good
for being
morning,
here.
Mayor. My name's Aaron Smith. I'm with the Traffic Division. Good morning, City Council. So basically, this grant is going to allow the Portland Police Bureau to put out extra enforcement in the area of the ODOT work zones to try and basically keep the workers safe and increase the awareness of the work zones, get people to slow down, and make everybody more safe.
Very good. Any questions, colleagues, comments? Is there any public testimony on item 801? One moment. Sorry, 801.
One moment, please.
Thank you.
So Sergeant, haven't we already had several serious injuries of
Unfortunately,
workers?
yes. There's been some fatalities, not within the city, but just a couple weeks ago, the construction down on McLaughlin, there was a drunk driver that ran into a large piece of equipment, and it's just a miracle there wasn't fatality out of that.
Okay.
And we do not have any sign up.
Very good. Please call the roll.
Saltzman.
Well, this added enforcement can't come soon enough. It is the construction season, We are thankful the legislature just passed a $5 billion plus transportation improvement package that will have a lot more work going on our roads and streets and our sidewalks, and we need to make sure that our workers are safe. And having our police there to help enforce the laws is very important to all of us. Aye.
Udaley.
Aye.
Fritz.
Thank you for your work. Aye.
Thank you.
Wheeler.
Aye, the ordinance is adopted. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Please call item 802.
Authorize a contract with Motorola Solutions, Inc. in the amount of $14 million to provide public safety communications equipment and related services.
Very good. And colleagues, as you'll recall, there was some council discussion about this. There was a write-up that has been done. Staff has gone around to council offices, but I wanted to go ahead and give you the opportunity to make a presentation.
Sure. Do you have any other further comments or questions based off the information we've provided since last week?
Could you put your name in the record, please?
I'm sorry?
Name for the record.
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Beth Fox. I'm the Communications Division Manager for BTS.
Thank you. And the only question that I have is, obviously there was a major renovation several years ago, and when you've just invested in a whole new system, you're not going to change the providers. How do we know that the cost per unit is competitive?
We get these, I brought one for show and tell today. This is a fire apparatus. We get these from the pricing from Motorola Direct. And although there are other resellers that sell this type of equipment, they can't sell it to us at the same pricing that we can get it from Motorola on the current contract.
And so if Motorola is selling it to the general public, it would cost more?
Built into this, just to clarify that piece, there's what's commonly called a most favored nation status. Basically, we get the best price from everybody, and their best pricing for their large national cooperatives and else are all the same. So it's a standardized best price. So no, it cannot be bought cheaper from anybody else anywhere in the marketplace.
That's what I needed to know. Thank you very much.
Very good. Any further comments or questions on this particular item? Is there any public testimony on this item?
We have 2 individuals signed up,
Very good. You want to just take a seat? Thank you. Thank you.
Nancy Newell and Joanne Hardesty. Please come up.
Good morning.
Good morning. As you well know, I am an advocate for no nuclear operations in our area or near our area. And I oversee whatever equipment municipalities, et cetera, require in order to detect unusual radiation levels, which we experienced in December 13th, and it was not reported until April of this year, the amount of radiation that was released from that 44-year-old nuclear plant operating at the Hanford Reservation, and it was finally discovered and reported by the Union of Concerned Scientists. So we have a 44-year-old plant that shouldn't be operating. I recommend the council not only go into an aggressive alternative program to get off that electricity, but also to require its immediate closure. This plant is just waiting, and it was just luck in December that it didn't melt down, according to the Union of Concerned Scientists, Dave Lochbaum, who has lectured all over the Northwest. This plant has got to be shut down. It's designed just like Fukushima. It has all the failures in the equipment of Fukushima. There's no place to put the waste. We are experiencing radiation levels in this city, especially in December, that went way up, and we finally figured out why. So I highly recommend this council put in a resolution not only for moving rapidly to alternatives, but the money we would save closing that plant is in the millions, and that's what I recommend.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Mayor, City Commissioners. I am Joanne Hardesty, and it's really close. I just wanted to comment on this this purchase of emergency equipment, and wanted to make sure that if we purchase any equipment, especially if we're spending $14 million, that we can communicate through all our emergency systems. I've been around long enough to know that police systems don't always connect with other emergency systems, and we have data systems that don't talk to each other. And so here's an opportunity to really make sure that what we purchase equipment that will communicate through all our needs. I just don't want to be back here again and find out that we have equipment that only handles one segment of our emergencies and not the other. We've been there before, and we've spent a lot of money, and so I hope the details of this will ensure that continuity across all our emergency systems. Thank you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more on that, Joanne. Thank you. Very good. Any further questions or comments, colleagues?
So
Commissioner Fritz?
Thank you. In regard to that, I believe this is the system that we switched to, and it was a major switchover. It cost $50 million or something. And so we are satisfied that it is working and communicating with all the other systems that it needs to.
Yes, we are. Again, my name is Beth Fox, Communications Division Manager for BTS. We have over 70 agencies with other sub-agencies within them, over 80 that utilize this radio system. So all of the public safety for Portland does, including 911 dispatchers use this, and it is actually a Multnomah County public safety radio system. So we are able to talk to any police department within our group, as well as fire, medical, and again, all 911 dispatch is done with this. So,
thank you.
And just a small piece, this $14 million is a maximum piece in this contract. The contract itself is to buy ancillary equipment for the system that we have already spent, as you indicated, $50 million to replace. This just picks up the small pieces on the edge, the add-on pieces, that kind of stuff. This is not saying we're just going to go out tomorrow and buy $14 million worth of radios.
Very good. Any further comments, questions, colleagues? Thank you for your testimony. Please call the roll.
Salzman.
Aye.
Udaley.
Aye.
Fritz.
Well, Mayor and staff, I really appreciate you spending the extra time to give us more information than we had last time and answer all of our questions. And I do appreciate that it took a very large cooperative effort to make sure that this system does work well. So I'm very pleased to support this. Aye.
Wheeler.
All right, the contract is authorized. So we've used all the filler we can use, and we cannot start the next item legally until 10:20, so we'll take a 6-minute recess and we'll reconvene at 10:20.
Nicely done.
We are now back in session. Please call item 788, time certain.
788, appeal of John Hollister against the Portland Historic Landmark Commission's Historic Resource Review decision of approval with conditions in the River District, Subdistrict of Central City Plan District for construction of a 6-story office building with a penthouse and 3-story underground garage at Northwest Gleason and Northwest 13th Avenue.
Very good. And for the record, this is an item where we've already held a hearing, we've already taken testimony, we took a tentative vote, and legal counsel, if I'm correct at this point, I can make the motion and take the vote. So colleagues, I move that the council deny the appeal upholding the decision of the Historic Landmarks Commission and approve the application with conditions and adopt the findings.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Udaley.
Aye.
Fritz.
So just disclosing that my staff have talked with both the appellant as well as the attorney representing the developer. Didn't learn anything that changed my opinion. Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The appeal is denied. Next item is item 816.
Item 816, amend relocation assistance regulations in affordable housing preservation and Portland renter protections.
Colleagues, first I'd like to present an amendment to swap out what was filed in the 710 amendments. That, as you will recall, was a minor fix. It switches that out for a who. Is there any further discussion on that? And can I get a second?
Second, absolutely.
So we have a motion and a second. Please call the roll on the amendment.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Udaley.
Aye.
I'm
Fritz.
actually delighted with this. I thought it should have been who. Aye.
Fish. Wheeler. Excuse me.
Let the record show that there is no matter too small for my attention. Aye, the amendment is adopted. Colleagues, I'm happy to bring forward these technical fixes to you today. As I've said many times before, we're in a housing emergency, and we need to continue to do everything we possibly can to improve the experience of renters and families who are experiencing housing stability in our community. Despite our strongest efforts at lobbying and coalition work, unfortunately, the legislature was not able to provide our city or the state with a just cause eviction standard or rent control, tools that we believe would have significantly helped us to address this emergency right now. Therefore, it's up to us to continue to take bold action to address this housing crisis using the tools that we currently have at our disposal, like mandatory relocation assistance. In February of this year, the council mandated that landlords in the city of Portland pay relocation assistance to tenants experiencing rent increases of 10% or more and tenants being evicted for no cause. There was an abundance of public testimony from housing justice advocates, community groups, and landlords and tenants alike, and it became clear that the community at large had a handful of outstanding questions about the mandatory relocation assistance legislation. So in response, we passed mandatory relocation assistance with an amendment that mandated that the Housing Bureau assemble an advisory group of landlords, tenants, and other interested parties to identify technical issues within the legislation and propose solutions to the issues that were identified. As I'm sure you all remember, the Technical Advisory Committee met several times throughout March and April, and they compiled their proposed amendments for the Bureau's consideration. At the end of May, the Housing Bureau staff presented changes to the mandatory relocation assistance ordinance on behalf of the Technical Advisory Committee. The council did not come to a consensus on the presented changes and asked that the Technical Advisory Committee revisit their recommendations with some clarifications. Housing Bureau staff facilitated additional meetings of the Technical Advisory Committee, and they've returned with additional recommendations today. I'm going to turn it over to Director Krieger, who actually, he's not here today, is that correct? Or is,
I'm not sure.
He may not be here today, but certainly Matthew Shabold is here from the Housing Bureau. And so in just a few minutes, we're going to go over the details of the recommendations. But first, I wanted to share just a couple more things. First, affordable, accessible, and quality housing for all Portlanders is one of my top priorities, and I know it is a top priority of this City Council. And I believe that tools like mandatory relocation assistance give us a real shot at providing basic needs. That's why I'm directing the Housing Bureau to continue to have the Mandatory Relocation Technical Assistance Advisory Group meet to determine what a potential long-term policy could look like. As you all know, this current policy is set to expire on October 6th. And two, affordable, accessible, and quality housing for all Portlanders is not just one of my top priorities or this council's top priorities. We've heard loudly and clearly that it's also a top priority for Portlanders. I take meaningful and equitable community engagement very seriously, and I know that this policy must include the voices of some of those who are the most directly impacted. That's why I'm directing the Housing Bureau to open 2 new recruitments. The Portland Housing Advisory Commission, the Bureau's community advisory body, and also the Renter-Owner Services Advisory Commission, otherwise known as ROSEC. I'm drafting legislation to get this up and running, and this new advisory commission will advise on issues of rental housing law and regulations, landlord-tenant programs and services, and provide a forum for public input on rental housing. So with that, I will now turn this over to Matthew from the Housing Bureau and others on the Technical Advisory Group. For example, Margot Black has been involved in this process, and she has been asked to testify as well. So with that, I will turn this over to you.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. So I will quickly walk through the recommendations, and then we'll turn it over to some of our technical group members who wanted to provide some testimony. We have three folks here. So as the mayor mentioned, I guess first I'll just stop for a moment on this slide because I know some of our discussion today will be about the group, the technical advisor group, and reaching a consensus or close to a consensus, close to unanimous consensus. And so I just wanted to flag the organizations that were represented on the technical advisory group. As the mayor had mentioned, on the 25th, council directed the Housing Bureau specifically to revisit subsection C and subsection D and the proposed changes there within from the first set of amendments that were brought forward by the Housing Bureau to council, to share the feedback from council with the technical advisory group, and then see if the technical advisory group could come to a set of consensus recommendations to bring back to council based on city council's feedback. With that, the first clarification was that the request for relocation assistance is not the notice to terminate the rental agreement, which did require some changes to code. There was some confusion and candidly differing opinions from different attorneys about whether or not the code as written meant that a request for relocation assistance was in fact a notice to terminate. And so the request to clarify this on behalf of the technical advisory group was something that was shared by both renter representatives as well as landlord representatives. And actually, if I could, let me take just a quick step back as I'm walking through these. I just want to emphasize that these are a package of amendments and that the consensus that was reached by the group was consensus on the overall package. So any significant changes or removals or additions, I couldn't necessarily say there would still be consensus for that package without going back to the group. So the second item is a change to the time frame, and there would be 2 changes. One would be to allow 45 days for the renter to request relocation assistance, and then 31 days to allow the landlord to pay that relocation assistance. Subsequent to the payment of the relocation assistance, the renter would have 6 months from the effective date of the rent increase. So not of the notice of the rent increase, but actually the effective date of the rent increase to do essentially one of two things. One would be to repay the relocation assistance, and the second would be to provide the landlord with a notice to terminate the rental agreement. And the conversation around this was that generally folks seem to acknowledge that 90 days was a pretty tight time frame for someone to try and assess whether or not they could, what housing was available to them to move into once they got the relocation assistance. So some of the renter representatives in the discussion wanted to provide more time for renters to try and identify and secure new housing that was affordable to them. And the landlord representatives wanted more certainty in terms of, well, what is the end date at which we'll know that either we're getting the relocation assistance back because the renter will be staying, or that they're providing us a notice to terminate, and so they're moving out and we can plan for the next renter to come in. And so this language was that compromise to reach that point. Given the longer time frame, there was some concern from representatives from the landlord side of the discussion that a renter could experience perhaps 2 qualifying events for relocation assistance, because in theory they could still be in the rental unit for a year or longer after the initial rent increase. And so there was some clarification to make sure that in code it said that a renter could only receive and retain relocation assistance once per tenancy. And actually, the code amendments you swapped out were due to some concerns that Commissioner Fritz had brought up on Friday when we had checked in with her about language in the code to make sure it was clear that it wasn't just receiving it once, but receiving and retaining in the event that perhaps they paid it back and stayed, but 2 years later, in the event of a permanent policy, there was a subsequent qualifying event. And then finally, to Commissioner Fritz's concern from the last City Council hearing on the 25th, we worked with the City Attorney's Office to draft some language around the utilization of LLCs, and that should an individual who owns multiple rental units across the city have them each within their own LLC, and that LLC only owns one rental unit, that doesn't create an exemption from the relocation assistance. That was a concern that had come up, and so we incorporated that in with the code changes as well. I want to note one thing about the meeting in which we were able to come to this consensus on the package deal. Affinity Property Management was present. They participated in the discussion, they raised concerns, and they helped work through some of the trade-offs, but in the end they chose simply to not take a position. I want to honor that on the record. PMAR, the Portland Metropolitan Association of Realtors, was not able to be present. Neither of their representatives were available on that date, but they did express in some email exchanges with staff before the meeting that they were not comfortable with the 6-month time frame for their members. And then Meyer Memorial Trust representative did not take a position due to their legal and tax exempt status. Well, so they participated from a kind of a technical expertise standpoint. They weren't forwarding any policy recommendations to a legislative body. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Colleagues, any questions? Very good. Is there any public testimony on this item?
So
I'm sorry, we have invited testimony.
We do. So we've
I
got
apologize.
Margot, and then Jessica and Katrina from the technical group will
Very
also
good.
join.
I apologize, Margaret.
Sorry if I snuck up too early. I thought I'd heard my
Nope,
name
you're
called.
good.
I didn't mean to do that.
You're good. Thank you.
I'll wait for them to come up if that's okay.
Thank you.
Should I start? Okay. Morning, Commissioners. My name is Margot Black. As required by City Code, I will disclose that I am speaking on behalf of the lobby entity, Portland Tenants United. I'm also a member of the Relocation Technical Advisory Committee, and I want to give testimony today regarding my concerns for a couple of the proposed technical amendments to the relocation ordinance. As mentioned, the committees met several times, each for a period of 3 hours, and through that process, we arrived at consensus on most of the amendments that you'll consider today, particularly the important package of amendments that Matthew just described. However, there's one technical clarification in today's proposed amendments that was not discussed by the committee, and this regards the exemption for landlords with a single rental unit. As defined by Oregon Revised Statutes, Chapter 90.123, landlord includes their authorized representatives, so property managers. Practically speaking, this means that a landlord with only one unit who employs a property manager would not currently be exempt under the ordinance. Today's amendment seeks to clarify that such landlords should in fact be exempt, whether or not they use property managers or not. There's also proposed language that seeks to rightly clarify that landlords who have, say, 5 properties under 5 LLCs should not be exempt, though if one were to determine that their LLC landlord only had a financial interest in one unit, they would still be exempt. If this sounds complicated, it's because it is. Commissioners, ultimately, I'd like you to strongly consider limiting the exemption to only humans, not LLCs, and only those humans who personally manage their properties rather than those who use a property management company. And I ask you to consider this in light of my belief that this was in fact the original intent of the exemption. Absent of this limitation to humans only and only those who personally manage their properties, these types of tenants would be denied relocation assistance from the following owners. Owners who bought their single-family rental property online from a company like Roofstock. By putting their single-family rental property in their online shopping cart, all from the comfort of their out-of-state living room. These are not obviously your small, financially constrained mom-and-pop landlords, considering that Roofstock boasts owning rental property doesn't mean that you have to be a hands-on landlord. For buyers who want to be less involved while earning passive income, choosing the best rental property management company makes it easy to focus more on the investing aspect and less on day-to-day operational tasks. So these will be your single unit owning landlords in the city of Portland who will be exempt from paying relocation assistance when that property management company no-causes that tenant or increases the rent by more than 10%. And that's the crux of this. If this amendment is intended to exempt single unit owners because of the small the financial burden on small landlords, the property management companies are literally incentivized to increase rent and to a certain extent, no cause evict because of finder's fees for replacing tenants, and they are responsible for making those decisions. So I don't believe it was the intention of council to exempt landlords who can afford to use such property management companies and whose decisions then cause the exact circumstances that we want to protect tenants from. It also denies tenants relocation when their landlord is an LLC, and the burden of is on the tenant to research who has a financial interest in that LLC. I very much appreciate the direction from the council to do as much as we can to limit that LLC loophole, but it still requires a tenant to go to the Secretary of State website and try to trace who has what financial interest. And it's really not easy. I consider myself highly technically literate, and I have run into many dead ends trying to figure out who has financial interests in what LLCs. So this really becomes an equity issue when tenants don't get this protection without having the knowledge, time, literacy, and resources to track down who owns their property. And this is fixed by requiring that the only landlords who are exempt are those who personally own and manage their properties. Council, though you know that as an advocate for tenants, I do not love that any tenants are exempt from relocation assistance when they're displaced from their homes through no fault of their own. But for the sake of diplomacy, I can accept it for the time being. However, I ask you to deeply consider what your intentions were when you did exempt single unit owning landlords, and whether or not that exemption should extend to those who can afford to employ property managers who are entirely responsible for the decision-making process that leads to rent increases and no-cause evictions, or have the business acumen to funnel their ownership issues or their ownership interests through an LLC. I provided council with proposed language that would limit this exemption to humans only and only those who personally manage their properties, as I believe this aligns with the original intent of the exemption and does not inadvertently make a loophole that is already being abused bigger. I'm grateful for your ongoing support of this policy and feel that the Relocation Technical Advisory Committee has been effective and professional. I'm fully in support of all the amendments that were discussed by the committee, but want to reiterate that this particular issue was not discussed, and that is because it was assumed that council's intent was to exempt certain landlords regardless of who manages their property. If that was your intent, then I will concede this point, but I would ask for your clarity on this. If it was not, I would like you to consider the revised amendment that I submitted to council by email this morning, and I have in front of me if you have any questions.
So yes, that was my intent in proposing that amendment, which did pass by the council. And I appreciated you sending your testimony in early, and that you said that by and large you would prefer property managers, that they often are more professional than out-of-state owners who just leave things alone. I would submit to you that if I was an out-of-state owner, what I would do is on 90 days plus one, fire the property manager and then give the notice, and then the tenant's really stuck with trying to deal with some out-of-state owner rather than. I just don't think that really solves the problem. So perhaps it could be something that the ongoing committee could discuss for when you come back with an ongoing package.
Well, as the lone person who voted against that amendment, I voted against it because no one could tell us how many units that would exempt, and therefore how many tenants would be left without this vital protection. That's not because I don't think there should never be any exemptions. I do think an exemption for instance, landlords who live on the same property as their tenants, like in a duplex or an ADU, could be a reasonable exemption. And those were the people we were mostly hearing from. Someone that built an ADU in their backyard, anticipating an elderly parent moving in at some point. Someone who lives side by side with a tenant in a duplex. That's almost like having a roommate and
Personally owned and managed.
Yeah. So I'm very open to this amendment. My concern was that it wasn't discussed in the group, and that these amendments today have all been agreed upon by this body, and that we didn't have time to kind of talk about it between offices. So I'm open, and it's certainly something I think we should be discussing in October.
So I'll chime in on this in the same vein. I appreciate your bringing this to our attention. I think it is an important issue that does deserve further discussion. I think I'm of a mind of Commissioner Fritz. I would like to see this discussed in the committee that's obviously going to be looking at a longer-term solution now, and this should definitely be in the mix as part of those conversations. So I do appreciate your bringing it to our attention. Very good. Okay. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for having us here. My name is Katrina Holland, for the record, Executive Director of Community Alliance of Tenants. And I just had a few comments to highlight about specifically the requirement for tenants to return the relocation assistance if they decide to swallow the rent increase, and then having to give it back if they haven't been able to find a place. I'm sure it's no secret that this ordinance is one of the only almost ready-to-go tools we have available for us to address this housing crisis in Portland. And as an organization that's been representing most impacted renters for 21 years, we're ecstatic to know that this is a long-term policy and consideration by the council. We look forward to shepherding policies like this in other jurisdictions around the state, and look forward to participating in conversations about what a long-term strategy would look like. A couple of items to highlight. We still believe that families need more than 6 months in order to find and secure a place. Ideally, we would love to see a year, but we agreed to support 6 months in the vein of being reasonable. However, we do feel like it does put most impacted renters up on the chopping block when it comes to being able to find a place to live, and then potentially the added burden of having to give that money back. I also want to highlight that we also have a significant issue concerning notification from landlords to tenants. This was something that was brought up in the committee in the last meeting. I can't remember what date it was. It was early July. But in a nutshell, many tenants would be required to hand over this money if they have not found a place in 6 months. And according to the ordinance, there is no mandate for the landlord to let the tenant know that that is the case. So for people who have heard about the relocation ordinance from their friends or family, or maybe have not had an opportunity to be educated through an institution like City Council or like Community Alliance of Tenants, they would be obligated to pay this back if they haven't found a place and they don't know that that's the case, subjecting them to significant harm. And so we'd love to see some action taken by the council to make sure that there is a notification, even if it's not at the time of the notice being given. Perhaps it's just included with the check as a separate notice so that tenants will have an idea that that is happening. I As an organization dedicated to providing support and empowering most impacted renters, specifically seniors, people with disabilities, Black and brown families, immigrants and refugees, single-parent households, these two issues could pose significant challenges for them. It's no secret that the socioeconomic status of many of those families are significantly lesser than their white counterparts and middle-class counterparts. So I would strongly encourage the council to consider these amendments and pass them today. And we want to make sure that this policy minimizes harm, and this would create more harm for these families.
So you're interested in having the landlord notify the tenant at the time, or at some point, either the notice of the increase or the issuing of the check, that there is a 6-month duration?
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
I think that's reasonable, and I would move that amendment.
Well, it seems like that could just be an administrative rule or a standard practice, that they're given a frequently asked questions.
Yeah, well, like I said, I don't have the exact wording in front of me, but I think it makes sense to say that a landlord will provide notice at either the notice of the rent increase or the issuance of the relocation check, that it has a 6-month duration attached to it. So I would move that amendment.
Because many families, it may take them 8 months to a year to find a place. And so without knowing that they are obligated to pay this back within 6 months, they'll end up swallowing the rent increase, thus taking away their money, and then having to pay it back. It would cause significant harm.
So I share your concerns about notice and clarity. I was surprised at this solution that the committee came back with. I think it's great to have the extended period to move out, and it serves the interests of landlords and tenants, which is ideal situation.
Agreed.
I'm concerned that a lot of landlords and tenants don't even know about our relocation policy and think that that language needs to be incorporated into the standard notice forms.
Agreed.
As far as the time period, it is my understanding, so a tenant gets 90 days notice of a no-cause eviction or rent increase.
Correct.
They have 45 days to say whether or not they're going to accept, well, on the rent increase, if they're going to accept it or they're going to move out.
Right.
Doesn't that 6 months begin at the end of that 90-day period?
It would, yes.
And then at the very end, they can give their notice. So it gets them to 10 months effectively.
Effectively.
Potentially more if the notice is longer than 30 days.
Yeah, I'm just, it's trying to track it through memory. So, yeah, and it's difficult because we don't have an office yet to kind of manage these new rules to make sure that everyone's aware. But, yeah, I definitely share those concerns. It seems like the notice coming with a check would make the most sense to me. If there's
Maybe
a notice
both.
that just, or both, yeah. I mean,
I'm just looking
no
at the
harm in
code here,
that.
and it says termination notice in quotation marks, so presumably staff can have a template which would have the rules and the options as far as paying it back, staying, etc.
And the actual date that they have to give notice or they have to return those funds.
Right. It
Not-
would just encourage families to be more prudent with the money as
Yeah.
they're looking for
Yeah.
places to live, whether to give deposit to holds or for application fees, et cetera.
So perhaps when staff come back up, we can find out whether that can be done administratively or whether we need to amend the code again.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. And let me do this just to keep this tidy. If it's administrative, I'd prefer to keep the administrative option open, but Commissioner Saltzman has made a motion. Can we get a second?
Yeah,
Just put it on the
I'd
table.
prefer it be in the ordinance itself as a new subsection F.
Okay.
But you know where? I mean,
Well, I would just put it at the end of the additional protections, add a new subsection F that says the landlord shall provide notice at the time of the 10% rent increase and at the time of the issuance of the relocation check, that the duration of that is for 6 months.
And I'll second that for discussion, Commissioner. I think actually it would go better as a new D and move everything else further down.
So why don't we have a motion in a second? Why don't we keep that open? And I would certainly welcome public testimony on this item and further staff input. Thanks, Katrina.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning. Hi, my name is Jessica Greenlee with Affinity Property Management. I'm the operations manager.
and part of the Technical Advisory Committee. In listening to the discussion, I just am wondering if we can more thoroughly vet that language that you would want to add for notification, just because it is important that it's accurate and will comply legally, and we won't, especially if we have to incorporate that into paperwork and disseminate that out to staff, that does take time. And so if that is a requirement that we're going to put in there, if there's an opportunity to allow that not to happen under an emergency status, that would be very beneficial, I think, for being able to roll that out into notices. Just a thought to consider as you're looking at that. I would also like to bring to council's attention another item that was not discussed in committee that is causing some just legal challenges. It has to do with the language in section B at the very end of the paragraph. It says, for the purposes of this subsection, a landlord that declines to renew or replace an expiring rental agreement on substantially the same terms, except for the amount of the rent or associated housing costs, terminates the rental agreement and is subject to the provisions of this subsection. That is included in the no cause section, and what we are experiencing is situations where a tenant will obtain legal counsel if we change possibly a smoking policy on a property, or an employee's employment has ended and they've lost their employee discount, are two examples that we're working through now. However, because it's part of the no cause section, we automatically incur damages in this situation because there's no obligation for the tenant to notify us of the substantially same terms. So not only are we then paying the relocation assistance payment, but we're also subject to Section D, where we're also paying damages on top of the relo without ever knowing we violated it, because substantially substantially the same terms is not defined. So we would like for the council to consider possibly moving that section to Section C, where there is a notification requirement in place, so that if a violation does occur in there, or a attorney brings that to our attention, they consider that to be substantially the same terms, that we have the opportunity to work through that because we have notification before we incur damages. So, I realize that this may be an item that is better addressed in the long-term policy than the short-term policy, but it is certainly something that we're starting to encounter more frequently.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And again, I want to thank all three of you for your service on this committee. It was very, very helpful to get all these perspectives. I'll just state my preference. My preference is that we not make technical amendments on the fly here today. That's my preference. My preference would be that it is already mid-July, and we know that this ordinance expires on October 6th. And so I'd prefer that we have these technical discussions at the committee level and continue to weigh them and vet them and the consequences of making technical changes, and then bring that back as part of the longer-term package. But I do appreciate your bringing it forward.
Jessica, would it make sense to iterate what would constitute a substantial change? Because a change in a smoking policy,
I think that would be very beneficial. I think there's a couple of ways to address this. Rather it be defining what substantially the same terms are, or moving that into the subsection where it does require some kind of notification.
Okay.
But that would be very beneficial.
Very good. Thank you. Any further questions for this panel? Very good. Thank you for your testimony. We appreciate it. Is there any public testimony on this item?
We've had 3 people sign up.
Okay, very good.
Please come up when I call your name. Shedrick Wilkins, Anthony Bensavigo, if I have that pronounced correctly, and Alan Kessler.
Very good. And is there anybody else here who would like to testify on this issue? Very good. We'll close the list.
I'm Shedrick Wilkins, and I was about landlords. I was a brief tenant at Dignity Village, in which the rent there was $20 a month. It was very communal. I didn't last there, and then I'm a veteran now. I'm under HUD and I'm on food stamps. But I do think that I think the economy of the future will get worse, and we will have more homeless people, And I do believe in kind of a, what is called a shack house existence that they're building. Some of these little shacks have solar panels on it. And in the last 5 years, I could have spent $5,000 on solar panels on my Dignity Village shack. Instead of paying the $100 I do a month to the HUD. And I would have liked it there. I liked it out there. It was kind of nice. Dignity Village has one bus, so I can commute to a job. I want to go back out to Dignity Village because I think people are going to wander out into the corridors again unless, of course, they stay in these shack leased things in somebody's backyard, kind of. I know for a fact, too, that a lot of people on the East Coast, when wintertime comes, they call up their relatives. They sell their blood, take a bus out here, spend 6 months during the wintertime, and go back to their other relatives in New York someplace. So, and Portland has very moderate climate, low population, and a lot of churches that'll give you some canned food. But I'm going to do one experiment. Every year I have to solicit for food stamps. And I have to call a state office. So what I've done is I'm going to take some little solar panels and prop them in my window and power up my cell phone. And you cannot email anybody for food stamps. You have to give verbal testimony in February that I stay here and call somebody. I usually do it from the Hollywood. I will get a phone and I will see if I can conduct and get a lot of information from just a couple of solar panels propped in the window. And if I certainly went back to Dignity Village, I could use those. And my son says I can put a keyboard in my phone and get a low-cost ISP and get on the internet. So I'm going to do some of these little experiments. And it's one advantage, in the 1920s when people were homeless, we do have a lot of this, what I call crystal magic, people's ability to get electricity from the sun, telecommute. I know some people actually write programs that have made $50,000 on an Apple phone. So it's amazing how you can do that. Be another Zuckerberg or something like that. And you don't have to have an office. You can just do it with a phone.
Thank you.
Commissioners, Mayor, Alan Kessler. I'm an attorney. I don't practice landlord-tenant law normally, but since this relocation ordinance, I've been accepting pro bono clients, tenants who are facing a no-cause eviction. So I've had several clients who are sort of trying to deal with the nuances of this law, and it's a challenge. I would submit to you that I believe it should be the policy of the council that no-cause evictions should be rare, should not be a normal tool, but should be in unusual circumstances. And to the extent that somebody's in the business of managing property, they can predict about the rate at which they're going to have to no-cause evict people, and they can build that into their fees and into the rent. They can amortize it over the whole population of tenants so that they can basically ensure those rare instances where a no-cause eviction is necessary. I understand that with mom and pop landlords where perhaps they're not as sophisticated, perhaps they just have one rental and that's their retirement income, and perhaps the exemption is appropriately applied to them. But I think that Margot is right. Where a property manager is making money on managing properties, then they shouldn't be using this tool, and we need to punish them if they do use this tool. Commissioner Fritz had a comment that if we were to adopt Ms. Black's language, that an owner would work with a property management company that would sell at the last minute. I note that Ms. Black's language actually includes the phrase, a landlord who at all times during the term of the rental agreement is a human being, blah, blah, blah. And I think that's a good option. I think that if we limit the cases to where there's a human being who manages a property, that person's self, throughout the tenancy and doesn't involve a property manager, then they should be exempt. But as soon as you start to involve shell companies and more sophisticated arrangements, then the person is more sophisticated, and they should be able to understand that if in the rare instance they need to know cause, they'll have to pay this fee. It's just part of the cost of doing business. it seems much more fair to put that on the side of people for whom this is passive income than the people for whom this is their home. Said differently, it seems that City Council is taking the position of people who own 2 houses and weighing that above the positions of people who have no houses. From the point of view of a tenant, it's impossible to know what the various ownership interests are. I'm an attorney, I can't claim to figure it out. I've had tenants come to me, I've had to turn them away because their property manager claims that, because an LLC owner claims that that's their only home in the city. I don't know whether that's true, but I can't afford, may I have just 30 more seconds, please? I don't know whether that's true, but I can't afford to, sue and find out later. Those cases just won't be prosecuted. One tenant in particular I wanted to tell you about was somebody who was on a lease with a property management company in a home for quite some time. And then January, I believe, of this year, the property management company sold to a local developer. The developer stashed it in LLC. About a month later, it issued a no-cause eviction. That LLC, as far as I can tell, only has one property that is a rental. It has other properties, but there are building permits on those, so I don't think that those are rentals. I can't take that case. That's a person who, did everything right, was a victim of development, a victim of exactly what we're trying to protect, and that's a human being who I can't help, who can't have relocation. I don't think that's the right policy.
Okay, thank you. Good morning.
Hi, my name is Anthony Benchavingo, and I'm an organizer with Portland Tenants United, and I do direct work with tenants on doorsteps when they contact PTU via Facebook messages, via emails, via phone. And I really want to second a lot of the comments that Alan Kessler just said about the fact that for a lot of tenants, it's very difficult to navigate the complex requirements around this law and whether or not they're eligible for relo, especially in cases where landlords are large landlords are trying to use this loophole where they can establish a bunch of different LLCs, which each only own one building, but would be under the same property manager or would be under, potentially different names who are all directly related to them. Or just under different names of LLCs, even though they're all tied in various ways to the same person. The thing about Relo is that it's working extremely well overall. I've talked to a lot of tenants who it's helped, but I've also talked to a lot of tenants who are not aware even of the details of this law and are certainly not aware, if their landlord doesn't tell them, that they're going to be eligible for it, even if they are. In the past 2 weeks, I've had 2 tenants contact me and say that they have landlords who they believe own multiple properties, but they aren't sure, and they aren't sure whether they're eligible for relo. And their property management company has either been non-responsive or when they've asked, does my landlord own multiple properties, have refused to tell them, which they are perfectly in their rights to refuse to do. And I generally forward these tenants to look their landlords up on Portland Maps, but usually they're not able to find their landlord's name. It's difficult to navigate that. It's difficult to navigate the Secretary of State's website. One very recent tenant who I just talked to yesterday, actually, who wanted to be here today, but I don't think was able to make it, is under in a building which is owned by Macaulay Enterprises, which is an LLC which owns 11 buildings across Portland, and all of them are under the same name, Macaulay Enterprises, but a slightly different number. So Macaulay Enterprises 5, Macaulay Enterprises 3, Macaulay Enterprises 2, etc. And when he contacted me, not realizing he was eligible for relo because they didn't tell him, I was able to, with the help of another PTU organizer, look this stuff up and figure it out and help him to find out that he was eligible. But this took like a solid hour with the help of another organizer, and it's because this is something that I've been doing for a while and I know the tricks. Most tenants, especially ones who don't have experience doing public records requests, who don't have college educations, for whom English is a second language, for who are working people, this is extremely difficult, and this is a loophole which a lot of landlords who should be paying relo and are very much able to are using to get out of it. So I very much want to support amendments that would make it so that we limit the small landlord exemption to those whose personal names are on Portland Maps and who manage their single unit rentals personally, not through a property management company. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'd just like to comment on that. Obviously, this is a thing that the ongoing committee will discuss more. And you had me right until the very last piece, which was, I agree that it shouldn't count for LLCs. This is what the attorneys here came up with, as to exclude that. So I think you'd agree that is a positive exception, clarification. Probably there's another way to say it, but I don't think if an elderly couple, for example, is using the rental property for their retirement income and they are physically not capable of managing it themselves, presumably if you engage a property manager, you're paying part of the rent. You're not charging more rent because you've got a property manager, because that would, the person who's wanting to buy the unit just wants to know what is the rent. And so I think that market forces would get there. So there's just something to think about as you continue on these discussions.
Thank you for your testimony. Colleagues, we have one amendment on the table from Commissioner Saltzman, and I view it as more of a clarification amendment as opposed to a tremendously substantive or technical amendment. I'd like to therefore ask if there is interest on the part of the council of changing this back to an emergency ordinance. I'd like to make that motion.
Second.
We have a second for discussion.
Yes.
So,
Very
Mayor,
good.
if I may interrupt, the change that was discussed is a change to proposed code language, and that's not the type of amendment we can do on the fly. Luckily, in the example of the city that works very quickly, there's a city attorney right now printing out copies of proposed text for that amendment. So for your consideration, we'll be looking for that door to open shortly.
So let me potentially amend the amendment that Commissioner Saltzman has put on the table. It's my understanding, based on some quick and dirty research I did during testimony, that you in fact do not have the rulemaking authority for this particular portion of the code. So Commissioner Saltzman is correct that in order for it to be enacted, it does have to be a formal amendment. But rather than doing the amendment on the fly, could we give them the authority to carefully draft the language that supports the intention of your amendment?
Right, well, I thought I understood from our attorney, they're drafting that as we speak. Is that?
They are, so it's at council's option as to how you would prefer to handle it. If you have language that works to affect it, that's one option. Another would be to give the Bureau the authority to do so.
Well, here's my question. We have 100 people in the room, some of whom are waiting for the next item, and this is the only thing left on the table. So unless that language is available right now, my preference would be to give you the authority to continue to work on that language and we move on. Otherwise, if it's ready, I'm certainly interested in hearing it.
Yeah.
The last email I have is that it's being printed and brought into chambers.
Okay, so it's on its way.
City attorney's right. This is the city that works.
Commissioner Daly? I'm sorry.
Do you want to respond to any of the testimony that was given in the meantime?
Kurt Krieger, Housing Bureau Director. This is a very delicate balance, and I'd say that it's not proportional, that owners of property have ceded in recognition that this is a life decision for a tenant, not just an economic decision. So they did so after lots of gut-wrenching debate and deliberation. And as you can see, once you start pulling at side issues, the whole agreement runs the risk of falling apart. I think it's to be commended that this group worked through some really tough issues during a legislative session when the legislature wasn't able to balance similar kinds of concerns. Hopefully it's a model for moving forward. And indeed, all of the policy issues were put into a parking lot. We were only dealing with technical corrections because both sides had things that they wanted to bring to the table, and Matthew needed to be a very tough enforcer about that traffic and narrowly construct the technical amendments. And that, I think, struck the right and correct balance. I don't disagree with Ms. Black's contention that when an individual property owner pierces the corporate veil by contracting with a property management company, that they have made a decision to put their business in the hands of another party, and they're willing to pay for that. That changes the business relationship. But that said, it was not discussed.
Very good. And it's my understanding, Director Krieger, that with the amendments that are currently on the table, that is not under discussion, that we're putting in the parking lot for the committee to continue to discuss as part of a longer-term solution.
That's correct.
So we now have some language from the city attorney, and I guess to be precise, I'll move that language as a substitute to my verbally worded amendment. So the new language would read under subsection C, the foregoing terms and conditions regarding the tenant's rights and obligations regarding the relocation assistance shall be included with the landlord's payment of relocation assistance to the tenant.
And I continue to second that.
All right, so we have a substitute amendment on the table. Any further discussion on the substitute amendment? Please call the roll.
Salzman.
Aye.
Udaly.
Aye.
Fritz.
Continuing kudos to Lisa Gramp and the City Attorney's Office for getting this done so quickly. Aye.
Wheeler.
All right, the amendment is adopted. To the amendment of reestablishing the emergency clause, please call the roll.
Salzman.
Aye.
Udaly.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Wheeler.
All right, the amendment is adopted. Colleagues, any further questions or clarifications before we get to the main motion? Staff, anything else you'd like to add?
No, but thank you very much for taking up this issue.
Great, well, thank you. Very good, please call the roll.
Salzman.
Well, I want to thank the committee. I want to thank the judge who upheld the constitutionality of this ordinance recently. Breitkoff, I believe his name is. Thank him for his wise decision. And I want to thank Matthew Chavold for carefully orchestrating the work of the committee to produce the products in front of us today. And so I'm pleased to support this, and I realize that we are really going to have to revisit this later. And the changes we're making are now, but I do feel the amendment we just passed is something that's a real here and now issue that people, as Commissioner Daly said, not a lot of people know about this relocation assistance ordinance, so it's important at this point more than ever that we make sure that landlords notify tenants of this program. And so please just support this package. Aye.
Udaly.
Well, I also want to thank the Technical Advisory Committee for hanging in there with what I know were some really tough conversations, for considering the issues that we raised during the last hearing on this item, and coming back with solutions that weren't what I had in mind, but I think are actually better. This is absolutely how this process should work. I want to thank the mayor and Commissioner Fritz for her clarifying amendments, as well as PHB staff, of course. Commissioner Saltzman beat me to the punch. I just wanted to hope, I hope that we would have a moment to revel in the ruling on our ordinance. We won the last legal challenge, we believe, and our relocation ordinance will stay in place, which is especially comforting considering we didn't get any tenant protections out of Salem this session. And I'm looking forward to the conversation moving forward. Aye.
Wheeler.
I'd like to add my...
Oh,
we
sorry,
forgot
Fritz?
somebody very important. Oh, yeah.
I'm the president. Thank you. Well, we adopted the initial ordinance as an emergency in February, as was right and proper, because we are continuing to have a housing emergency. And I commend Commissioner Udaly for her leadership in bringing it forward then and doing it as quickly as possible. Since then, there's been this wonderful new committee which Mayor Wheeler directed and Commissioner Fish directed to have happen. And so there's been much more conversation about the pros and cons. And what I'm hearing now from all sides is more of an understanding of that there are pros and cons and that sometimes you need to compromise. And that's kind of what the art of politics, and certainly on the City Council, that's what we try to do so that everybody gets most of what they want, hopefully. Most of the time, not few people get exactly what they want on every single detail. So again, thank you to Commissioner Udaly and Mayor Wheeler for partnering on this great effort, and Denis in the City Attorney's Office for arguing that case before the judge.
Thanks to Goldan Salazar in my office and Jamie Duell in Commissioner Udaley's. This is really great staff work as well as good work and good collaboration from everybody on the council. Aye.
Wheeler.
I'd like to thank Director Krieger and your team, Matt, in particular. I want to thank you. And I definitely want to add my name to the list of people thanking the Technical Advisory Committee for their incredibly hard work on this. And I know that there is much that the committee members do not agree on, and I appreciate the tone and the tenor of the conversations that have taken place in those committee meetings. I think we did a good job of putting the right people on that committee who could have some fairly direct conversations, and everybody still stayed around the table. And I think that's the best way to make policy. I agree with Commissioner Udaley. It's disappointing to be here effectively 6 months after where we started and realizing that we are going to have to continue to go on our own. We're going to have to continue to lead here from the City Council chamber in the absence of further statewide leadership. And we're perfectly content to do that. It means we've got a lot of work ahead of us, and I know we're up to the job. So I look forward to continuing to work with everybody on this important issue. I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted as amended. Thank you. So that brings us to items 798 through 800. I would ask that we please read all three of those items together.
798, adopt the Community Equity and Inclusion Plan for all City of Portland public improvement contracts that utilize alternative contracting methods and have estimated contract values of $10 million to $25 million, and require consideration of modified community benefits agreements for public improvement contracts with estimated contract values in excess of $25 million. Item 799, direct the Bureau of Revenue and Financial Services Procurement Services Division to develop and implement a contract delivery method selection process for public improvement projects with construction contracts estimated at $10 million and over. Item 800, direct the Office of Management and Finance and the Office of Equity and Human Rights to develop a community opportunities enhancement program and funding plan.
I'd like to start with some brief introductory remarks. First of all, I want to thank all of you who are here who've worked on this issue over a period of months, if not years, to take into account the varying views of different stakeholders. These resolutions that are coming before the City Council today, I want to be very clear, this is a first reading. So there will be no vote on this item today. This is going to come back to the council in August. We haven't settled on a date yet, but we will certainly publicize the date in August when we bring it back for final consideration of amendments, some of which I'm sure will be put on the table today. We wanted to give the stakeholders who've worked so hard on this an opportunity for public testimony, and so that's our primary objective today. Given the time allotted today, and how many people do we have signed up right now?
20. Here, there may be another sheet outside.
Okay, so why don't we do this? Assuming that there are 23, let's start with 2 minutes of public testimony each. That's the same amount that you get at the legislature. It's a little less than we like to do here, but we obviously want to get through this today. So if people could please limit their testimony to 2 minutes. If it turns out we have another sheet, we might have to further reduce that, but let's assume we have 23. When I took office, I wanted to make sure that the CEIP would meet the city's goals for contracting while also meeting the critical timelines for Bureau construction projects. This project both increases capacity in the minority contracting community while also protecting the rights of workers. I and my fellow city councilors want to ensure that this project will meet our expectations and balance these needs. The CEIP is an inclusive plan that provides equal opportunities for both union and open shop participation. That's something that I believe is very important. The CEIP goals related to the utilization of women and minority contractors, workforce, and apprentices are much clearer and more consistent and align with our city's stated goals. The CEIP plan is going to continue to be an important part of the city's fair contracting forum to ensure collaboration and conversations regarding important contracting issues happen in the same place. The CEIP sets clear expectation for contractors and cities' engagement with the Oversight Committee, and that's the Community Equity Inclusion Committee in particular. It sets forth specific timelines and content to be reported to the CEIC for their review and for their feedback. The CEIP will create a 1% set-aside, which will apply to all public improvement construction contracts, not strictly to alternative contracts, to ensure that the city's goals are met. The CEIP pulled many components from the modified CBA and all the Community Benefits Agreement, and although many provisions are substantially similar, the format was changed to provide greater clarity with regard to the obligations of each of the parties. So with that, I will turn it over to Dante and to Tom. We have some invited testimony as well today. So we'll start with the Chief Administrative Officer, Tom Reinhardt, and the Director of Office and Human Rights, Dante James. And I don't know which of you gentlemen would like to go first. Director James?
Thank you. I drew the short straw. Am I not on? All right, there we go.
There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. It's my pleasure to be here just to offer some opening introductory remarks, and I think you've done a great job of kind of defining and describing why we're here this morning, essentially to address the issues of the underutilization of minorities and women in contracting and in the workforce. And I don't think there's any question about the fact that there is a need for this type of process, these types of plans. I, in some sense, came late to the game, and as the process was begun, I was truly lucky to work with an excellent team from OMF, and I truly just want to thank them personally and publicly. Christine Moody, who's now moved on to the port, has worked extensively and tried to bring this to conclusion, so it's a shame that she's not here to witness this. Molly Washington, who is sitting here, has been instrumental in putting her legal skills to use in crafting and creating the document that you see before you. Teresa Elliott, her engineering skills and her work within BES, her intimate knowledge of how this would actually play out was very beneficial in putting this all together. Kathleen Massier, the same. Jamie Waltz, and her skills at keeping us on track as a project manager or on parallel. Betsy Ames, phenomenally engaged in crafting this document. And then Tiffany Penson, my road buddy, as we drove all around the city meeting with lots of different people explaining this process. So many thanks to them and many others who were involved in this process, and certainly Tom coming in and shepherding this to get us where we are. As you said, it's the CEIP, the Community Equity and Inclusion Plan, which also includes the partnership agreement, the Exhibit A that you have, as well as the creation and staffing of a Community Equity and Inclusion Committee, the CEIC. The 1% plan will be, or proposal resolution is also before you, as well as the need to craft the process by which we will determine the best projects to put these plans on. So that's the what. The why is really simple. As I said, these processes are necessary because of the continued underutilization of minority and women-owned businesses and minority and women in the workforce on city-funded construction projects. We cannot, however, fail to call out the reason for the underutilization. And that is that I would suggest to you that racism is still explicit and implicit in the construction industry that impacts contracting and hiring in this city. And the outcomes, without plans such as these, bear this out. As do the narratives by the people who work in this industry, in contracting, and own companies, and are trying to get employed in the workforce. And these resolutions, this plan is an effort to try to put the city in the best position to address and not be a participant in the continuing racism or implicit bias that infects the industry currently. And so that's why we're here. And so I don't want to lose that reasoning, that rationale, and the purpose for why we're here. And I think that this plan and these resolutions go a long way to try to address that. You'll hear lots of testimony. I'll be back probably explaining a little bit more. The short answer for me is I think this is a more robust document. And if you look at the original document that had aggregate goals for MW and ESB, theoretically you could have met every goal with all white male-owned businesses. And that was never the intent. This document changes that because it disaggregates the goals and requires specific utilization of MBEs as well as WBEs, 12% and 5%. And so for that reason alone, the document needed to be changed and adjusted. And this document does many other things besides that, but it absolutely addresses that. So with that introduction, I will stop and let Tom take us a little further.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director James. For the record, Tom Reinhardt, Chief Administrative Officer. I became more deeply engaged in this process in April on the mayor's request, and I just want to provide a couple of what I consider contextual remarks to why this set of companion resolutions is so important. Both staff and leaders in the contracting community have recognized for years that a piecemeal approach to our efforts at providing more opportunities to both MWESB contractors while also expanding minority and female participation in the workforce is problematic on many levels. For example, in my conversations with directors over the past few months, I've learned that we have several different efforts currently going on that all had different programmatic approaches to achieve our goals. The Washington Park Reservoir Project, the Portland Building Reconstruction Project, which I am deeply involved in, Pioneer Square Reconstruction, and the 10th and Yamhill Project. All have different approaches. That means a different set of Molly's team from the City Attorney's Office, equity staff, bureau staff. This is an effort to really give the city one approach to this that can provide certainty both to the contracting community and to bureaus. In April, after Dante and Tiffany finished their excellent outreach work, the mayor directed me to try to figure out how to take all that feedback. And I want to again thank my team because they went through dozens and dozens of comments, phone calls, meetings with community partners to put together the product that you have in front of you. And we come before you today with the confidence that these resolutions provide the city with the structure required to not only meet our goals, but goals in terms of equity and attacking these problems that have persisted for so many years, but also to fulfill what the council directed your various bureaus to do in the budget process, which is accomplish ambitious construction goals as the city continues to grow. So I want to make sure that point is clear, that we've tried to meet that delicate balance. And now I'll turn it back over to Dante to walk through the first resolution, any pieces of that you want to do an overview of.
Thank you. Thank you. As you said, Mr. Mayor, the foundation of this document was the CBA, the modified CBA, as well as other plans that were being used by other bureaus on other projects. Specific differences from that modified CBA that was used was that, as I said, the goals are disaggregated for MWBEs and ESBs. There's no specific union signatory requirement. There's no specific additional requirements for union utilization of apprentice programs in preference in that regard. There are prescriptive requirements for reporting to the Oversight Committee, the CEIC. The 1% fund, which is brought separately, was removed from the initial CEIP document and is being brought separately, so should there be a need to modify or adjust the actual CEIP, the 1% will always be able to stand by itself and continue. And then there were formatting changes. So those were probably the most significant changes from the modified to the current. There are significant similarities. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I would suggest the outreach is one of them, in how we perform the outreach and who we heard from. I have a document that gives you a little more detail, which I'm not going to go into. But just to give you a brief oversight, there was an email that went out to 42 organizations or individuals that detailed the new CEIP and offered the opportunity for feedback and review over a period of a couple of months. Of those organizations that received the information, we as in Tiffany and I, met with 21 organizations or individuals to explain, to answer any questions, and to get their feedback in person at those meetings, and then offer them additional time to review the document and give us feedback, us being the working group, in writing after a much more in-depth review by them. So we received written feedback from 22 of the organizations who we met with out of the 42. Significant organizations that we met with were, or at least that we offered the opportunity for meeting with, was NAMCO, MCIP, Oregon Tradeswomen, Constructing Hope. I mean, I'm not going to read them all to you. Several of the union trades, the Urban League. So we received feedback from, as you can see, most of those, and many folks from within the Metropolitan Alliance for Workforce Equity as well. We specifically met with 3 construction organizations, NUCA, Northwest Utility Contractor Association, OAMI, and Portland Business Development Group, PBDG, as well as apprentice programs, Associated Builders and Subcontractors, Construction Industry Training Trust, and Northwest College of Construction. So, as well as others that you can see who provided feedback. A significant amount of that feedback was incorporated into the CEIP. And Ms. Washington can give you some more details about that specifically. But I will submit to you that a significant amount of that feedback was incorporated. Some organizations that we reached out to didn't give us feedback. Some we reached out to do a personal meeting with didn't respond. We followed up. I think Tiffany's emails were flying back and forth, and she was, I can tell you, very, very intent on getting as much opportunity for feedback as possible. The feedback then came into not to me or to an individual, although some sent it to me, but it went to a city email box that was then utilized to compile all that feedback, and then Molly did her legal work and put a lot of that into the document. After consultation with a lot of the bureaus, with some of the council staffs and other things, we incorporated as much as I think that we could, and from a legal perspective, as legally was allowed to be done. If you look at, again, some of the similarities as well, on page 7+, it talks about the CEIC, which is, I'm sorry, page 7 of the actual CEIP document. It talks about the CEIC, which in some sense is similar to the original LMCOC, the Labor Management Community Oversight Committee. Try not to throw too many acronyms at you. Here it's designed to review performance and advise on means of better achieving the goals. They will receive quarterly reports from the contractor, as well as be able to forecast, their forecasting reports. So they should be able to know what's expected. They'll get the reports and be able to review whether those goals were actually met. And so those come on a quarterly basis, and they can request to meet with the contractor more often if everyone would agree to that. The CEIC is also can be used to assist the city in enforcing the document. The enforcement is simple. If you are not in compliance with the document as a signatory, it's considered a material breach. You are then subject to liquidated damages, progress payments can be withheld, up to and including termination of the contract. So there is enforcement built into this document. 1% community capacity support is a more focused and has greater depth of all across the city viewer involvement. And as I think you mentioned, it's not just alternative bidding, but for the entire dollar amount for the expected construction, low bid or not, will be part of this in hard construction costs. And so it's not just one project's 1%, but it's the totality of the projects that are being paid and done in the city, so that there's a consistent and constant amount that will be known and be able to be utilized by those service providers who are doing workforce provision, et cetera, so that we are building capacity in the city ongoing. So it's not just necessarily this project, but the expectation, we are looking in the long term to build the pipeline, excuse me, for workforce as construction ramps up in this city. Those, I think, are at least highlights of some of the similarities in this document. As I've said, I think it's more robust. The document speaks to making sure it's a harassment-free workplace and what that means, and the training that's expected to be provided by the contractors to the subcontractors. You can see that on page 15 in section B of the actual CEIP. There's requirements for the numbers of restrooms for women on the job site, as well as lactation facilities, should those be necessary. So, I mean, it becomes a much more detailed document of expectation of how you are treating your workforce and what you are providing for them to make this truly a harassment-free workplace. Is there a way to make that perfect? Absolutely not. We tried to be as detailed as possible without putting in every possible reason there would be harassment on the workplace, on the work site. But this document, as an example of those kinds of things that are in this document that were not in the previous document, that give this more teeth and I think greater depth and breadth when we're addressing what we need to address here in this for the issue. So, thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
So, Mr. Mayor, just to check with you here, we have the two other pieces of the three companion resolutions. Do you want us to walk through those quickly?
Yes, because we're gonna vote on them individually, but we want the presentation and any public testimony to be reflecting on all three of those resolutions.
Okay. So item 799, I just want to do a brief overview, and then Ms. Washington is going to go through the details of it. It really alludes back to my opening comments around, developing a contract delivery method selection process that's both effective for...
Tom, I'm sorry to interrupt. I want to correct myself. We're not taking any votes today, but when we do vote, we will vote individually on the three resolutions. And so today, when we take public testimony, we'll be taking testimony on all three of the resolutions.
Excellent.
Sorry
Thank
for
you.
the interruption.
That's okay. I'll try to get my rhythm back. No. We want to make sure that the contract delivery method selection process, in terms of how this goes through procurement, is effective. It vets the projects correctly and decides how they're going to be approached in the most effective manner. And going back to my opening comments, historically the city has done approximately 75 million public improvement projects each year at actually around $75 million. So, 75 projects at $75 million. So it's strange how those numbers worked out. But in the past 3 or 4 years, we've seen that number significantly creep up. So if you smoothed out, the previous 20 years, we'd be at that 75 figure, but we're seeing that go way up, and we anticipate that to continue to climb. So we really this section was worked on extensively to make sure that we have a robust process to vet these projects and to make sure we're approaching them correctly in terms of the CEIP. So Molly, you want to take it away from there?
Sure. So the second resolution directs the Bureau of Revenue and Financial...
Molly, I'm sorry, could you identify yourself for the record?
Sure.
Thank you.
Molly Washington, Deputy City Attorney with the City Attorney's Office. Directs the Bureau of Revenue and Financial Services Procurement Services Division to develop and implement a contract delivery method selection process for public improvement projects with construction contracts estimated at 10 million or over. What that basically means is that when you have a construction public improvement contract, that typically gets defaulted to low bid per statute. So if you're low bidder, you win the project. However, the statute and code provide for an exemption from the low bid process if you meet a certain amount of findings. Why this is a companion resolution and important for purposes of the CEIP is that the CEIP and the equity plans that Tom discussed on the various other projects are things that really only apply when you have an alternative contracting method utilized. So what we've done here is to try to provide, or what we're requesting is to try to provide the bureaus with a little bit of process in how they're going to determine what type of contract delivery method is really appropriate for the project that they have in front of them. Alternative contract delivery methods can provide substantial benefits, public benefits, as well as cost savings to the city. and are typically used on projects that have a bit of technical complexity to them, some operational and scheduling constraints, public safety and risk impacts, and projects that require specialized expertise. But oftentimes, this method can really only be utilized if it's considered early in the construction project process. So the benefits, again, to this type of contract delivery method, which we generally call alternative contracting, is that it allows the city to consider factors other than cost when selecting the contractor. So instead of just awarding the contract to whoever has the lowest bid, the city can consider other things such as the qualifications of the contractor, the experience and expertise of the contractor for that specific scope of work. They can also consider the qualifications to perform the work, the project team involved, sub-consultants, key trades, as well as corporate responsibility, which is generally also included, and their commitment to equity. The city has done several of these types of projects, not a lot, but several. And as we've looked at some of the results from those post-project reports, as well as what we expect to see in terms of benefits, these projects that are alternative contracting methods have had enhanced partnerships with the contractors. They're able to bring the contractors in early, so they realize a lot of benefits in terms of risk mitigation, risks such as material procurement, safety, constructability, access, community relations, also value engineering, which can result in substantial cost savings. Again, as I mentioned earlier, these projects also lend themselves to applying an equity plan, whether it's the CEIP or some other type of equity plan. Those are available tools that can be used when a contractor is involved early in the process. So the purpose of this resolution is just to allow the city and the bureaus to be very intentional in how they decide what type of method they're going to use for their construction projects, whether it be low bid or an alternative procurement, and to have a consistent approach for the bureaus to use citywide so that when they are thinking at the inception stage of what this project has in terms of risks and what it needs, they can be thinking along the lines of, is an alternative procurement an option here? And that's hopefully going to enable us to use these types of contracting methods a little bit more for projects that have some of the unique factors that I mentioned earlier, and get better value for the city, but also be able to utilize some of these equity plans that we've brought today. So basically, the resolution directs the Bureau to develop and then implement across bureaus a contract delivery method selection process that they will use to determine whether each project will be low bid or alternative. And that will be at the $10 million level, where those projects have to go through this process. At the $1 million level, we'd just like to encourage that bureaus utilize this as they see fit. If you have any questions?
Excellent work, thank you.
Dante James again. The resolution directing the Office of Management and Finance and the Office of Equity and Human Rights to develop a community opportunities and enhancement program and a funding plan is just that. It will allow us to put the best process together in order to be able to determine where the best use of those funds go. It's separate in a sense from the CEIC, the Equity Inclusion Committee, different than the CBA, which was the LMCOC, did a little bit of both. There was concern, question, distress about the possibility of an appearance of impropriety or conflict of interest, and so this done separately, is to address that. There may, in fact, be people who are working on the CEIC who are also doing workforce service provision. And so they should be able to avail themselves of this fund should they wish to and apply for the grants that are available. So that's why it's done separately in this instance. The process by which that will be determined yet is to be fleshed out between OMF and my office. But it will be done in the form of grants similar to the CBA, the modified CBA, a significant portion will go for workforce, and then a smaller percentage of that would go for contracting support and assistance. But that's the kind of broad process for this fund.
That concludes what we plan to present. We're available for questions and any other assistance we can provide.
Very good, thank you. And we have some invited testimony today. The first three, and I don't know if they're all here. Nate McCoy is here, and Jeff Moreland is here, and is Willie Myers here? There's Willie, way in the back. Come on up, gentlemen.
You want me to go first?
Yeah, sure, why not?
So first off, Mayor, Commissioners, thank you for having me today. For the record, my name is Nate McCoy. I'm the Executive Director of the Oregon chapter of the National Association of Minority Contractors. First, just for the record, I want to put out there that NAMAC's stance is we're a body of membership that is not anti-union, that is not pro-union, but pro-business choice. We think we have to have capacity in our community to have an option and flexibility to make decisions on our own, and certainly make relationships with those that are both on the non-union and union side. So just wanted to make sure I put that out there. As it relates to our CEIP and CBA discussions today, I want to give you guys a lot of positive credit for the leadership and the road trips that I've seen Tiffany and Dante take. I've had to turn my phone off a couple times because they're really trying to warrant the kind of conversation that gets us to the point of where we are today. And I appreciate the leadership that's in front of us for staying steadfast to really trying to, as Dante alluded to, create these outcomes that we don't see every day. We've been talking about this discussion for far longer than I've been alive, and we're still having it today. So I'm glad that we're now taking a proactive choice of really looking at this and taking it head on. A couple things that struck out to me in the documents, and I want to err more on the pros side, is I'm ecstatic about the alternative contracting pathway that we're looking at, pointing direction towards some of the community benefit plans that Parks is doing. And I know Amanda's heard me time and time again commend them as I've been on the committee. Both of those two Parks projects have minority GCs operating on them. We just had a meeting 2 weeks ago where both projects are meeting and far exceeding the expectations of minority contracting, minority equity on the workforce, and including women. So both sides, and there's non-union and union representation across the board. So I just can't say enough about multiple processes, even including maybe even some of the CBA projects that, there's not one fix that solves these problems. It's multiple ways of taking businesses at where they're at. The other thing I want to say is I'm also looking forward to the resource conversation, because it's hard work to be out here working feverishly without building capacity for those who carry the voice of minority contractors. I'm in a lot of these meetings. Certainly I'm outnumbered half the time, and it's okay, but I just want to see a little bit more robustness of resources to almost put money where our mouth is if we want to see these outcomes come to fruition. So I can't wait for that next chapter of this evolution. And then what's most important, more than even these plans and these agreements, is we've got to get back on track with monitoring, tracking. We've done a horrible job, and our city auditor last year came out with a report really striking hard at the procurement processes and the lack of data. And I don't think anybody behind me could argue that we have a heavy lift to get our tracking systems and our disaggregated information back on track. It's hard to do good work across both sides if we don't have real-time information in which to really embark and come up with solutions. And then what I also want to mention is a little bit more clarity on, what we're going to track. I think time and time again, we track people getting into the workforce and getting them on these jobs through the workforce training and hiring programs. What I tend to not see a lot of proactiveness on is after those jobs are done, are these people sustaining a job, or are they going back to working at McDonald's or Safeway? It's terrible for me to come across people in my community who went through an apprentice program and found themselves not looking or not finding a job to sustain themselves. I mean, a lot of these social issues we're talking about, housing and, and healthcare. I mean, have a living wage job really eliminates a lot of those issues. And I would ask that as we move forward and we track, we ask our non-union and union counterparts to give us that information because it's more than just the hiring of the folks for these city projects. It's more intentional to show if they actually sustain the job long-term. And then lastly, before I let others speak, is I just want to also talk about real quickly mentorship. What I don't see in this document that speaks to it, and it's a glaring issue that talks about the racism and the discrimination for young minorities that would love to know more about construction, is where are mentorship programs? And I'm talking more specifically in the schools and highlighting contractors of color and really making sure that they also work with our apprentice programs to, forge opportunities for these kids. It's a hard challenge to, maybe have our white counterparts to come and educate or, really mentor a kid who's got a whole completely lived experience that's very different. We're looking for folks, and you'll hear from one here in a minute, who does this day in, day out. Doesn't get paid $1 to do it, but does it all day long. So I just want to encourage us to also look at that and be very intentional about what the mentorship of these two programs really need to offer and how you guys need to be enforcing that we do it the right way. So with that said, thank you.
Thank you for being here. We appreciate it.
Mayor, Commissioners, my name is Jeff Moreland. I am president of Raymore Construction. I am also a board member of the National Association of Minority Contractors. I'm going to speak to you today more on behalf of my construction company versus a NAMAC. And again, I want to give credit to Dante and Christine and Tiffany and all the staff for all the work that they put into this. And I think this is a great step in the right direction in terms of being able to look at alternative methods of contracting, to be able to provide the support necessary for minority contractors and contractors to do equity and conclusion. And that's really what it's about. It's about equity and inclusion. The only concerns that I still have, at times I still see almost looking at a CBA as synonymous with equity and inclusion. And I just want to state it's not. I'm union contractor in some areas, and I'm non-union contractor in other trades. And that is specifically based on the unions and what I see in the unions and their commitment for equity and inclusion. And let's just face it, there's some unions that's going to be better than others. A lot of them have struggled, and we know this because at this stage of the game, if it was really about inclusion, the union's been around a long time, I think that our workforce would be a little bit more diverse than it is right now. And that has nothing to do with the owners and their direction. It has everything to do with the fact is that this has been an issue, an ongoing issue for a very, very long time. So Raymore, as a company, we employ a lot of people. We just finished up a $7 million project for TriMet, who's a great owner. And they really stressed this issue. We came out with 84% DBE, MWESB inclusion, and a 64% diversity workforce. We represent exactly what you guys are trying to do. Some of you guys have seen our crews downtown work, and our crews reflect diversity. It reflects inclusion. That's who we are. So I speak to you because I just want you guys to understand that making sure that we don't allow any special interest to hijack what we're trying to do. And what we're trying to do is get equity and inclusion in contracting and in the workforce. And I think that you guys are moving in that direction, and I give you guys all kudos for moving in that direction strong in your team. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your testimony. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Willie Myers. I'm the Executive Secretary Treasurer of the Columbia Pacific Building and Construction Trades Council. I have a quick question. I was under the understanding that there might be some amendments coming forward that we would be also having an opportunity to testify to. Is that?
There is always the opportunity for amendments to come forward. None have been proffered to this point.
All right, then first off, I'd like to thank the city for supplying staff and facilitating the meetings where we were able to work for creating both the CEIP and the CBA concept back into the city's procurement considerations. At this point in time, we would not be in support of the resolutions as written. We believe that it needs to be, there needs to be a trigger. So the threshold actually needs to be the trigger that says that we will be doing a community benefits agreement once it hits 25 million. There's a couple other things in it that are also of consideration that we would like to be able to work with you to change before August, before the vote. We're also not in complete favor of the CEIP, and the CEIP or the CBP, Community Benefits Plan, and the community, it was Contracting Equity Inclusionary Plan is the way it was written to begin with, and it was sole focus was on contracting equity at the expense of workforce. There was no mechanics for delivery of workforce, and I have to applaud staff once again for taking us back in the direction and adding those mechanics back to it with both the oversight with the committee and but that has yet to be determined who's actually on the committee, whether it's meaningful and transparent oversight with accurate data that, so I mean, it's a good step in the right direction, but at this point in time, we're still not in favor of the CBP or the CEIP. The penalties are added back to it for noncompliance, which we liked, and the partnering agreement, which makes people responsible for the delivery. It allows people to take ownership of the delivery of what the city is asking for. The partnership agreement is a well-written document. So at that point, I mean, without any amendments to it, we would not be in support.
Very good. And just to be clear, these are resolutions, but we're treating this as an ordinance because
Correct.
it's important. So what we're doing today, which is a little unusual, is we're taking testimony today, and then we're effectively giving people a month to consider what's been said today and what testimony has been provided.
Okay.
And then it's still possible for people to provide amendments up until the time when we take the vote next month. So just to be clear, we're trying to be supportive and inclusive of different perspectives on this, and it may be the case that we get some amendments, or we may not, but we're leaving that opportunity open. Commissioner Saltzman.
Yeah, I would like to just float two amendments that I am contemplating with you gentlemen, and I want to see what the testimony is on these amendments as well before I would formally offer them. But one would be to require for projects over $25 million to go straight to a CBA, Community Benefits Agreement, rather than having sort of the internal valuation process, to simply make it more clear to our bureau directors that this is the direction we want to see city move to. And so that's one amendment. And the second amendment would be to raise the requirement, the threshold for workforce participation requirements from $100,000 to $500,000. $100,000 seems like a pretty low threshold, and you know, $100,000 contracts don't do a lot in the city public works realm. So it seems like $500,000 would be a more appropriate threshold. So I'd be curious if your thoughts.
Sorry if I start.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the one caution I would have on raising the threshold for I mean, yes, I would be in favor of the first amendment that you brought up. The second amendment, raising the threshold for the workforce hiring language, which also includes apprenticeship, is that the state just passed a resolution or passed a law that so anything over $5 million total construction cost, you're talking about subcontract. So if it's $5 million total construction cost, there are apprenticeship requirements that you want to make sure that you don't fall below the state standards that were just passed. So it's something that we would need to really maybe look at and work on some language that protects. I mean, we should be raising the bar, number one. So yes, we should have a low threshold. We're Portland. We should be raising the bar. We shouldn't be trying to meet the state minimums. So, I mean, it's just something that I think we need to look at, and I think we could have a workshop and figure out a solution for that.
Mr. Moreland, Mr. McCoy, got any thoughts on?
So what I'd like to say is we're still in favor of the threshold being raised. I think the challenge that we brought up at the Fair Contracting Forum was pretty spot on. The city typically has contracts of $300,000 and higher that more or less are where you see a lot of the benefits of the workforce training opportunities. So it seems like a program that hasn't changed since 1997 should be adjusted since we're in 2017 to kind of catch up with the times. I guess the other point on that subject is We also want to make sure that we encourage, again, minority contractors. There's a huge swath of contractors who avoid City of Portland work based solely on the workforce training and hiring program. So I agree with Willie on one front that we all care about a robust workforce. We just all want the system to work for those who don't see it beneficial today. So I think that's the comment that I want to stay steadfast to, is that, you know, look at the numbers. The numbers are glaringly horrible with the City of Portland when it comes to minority contracting. And this is not synonymously different than what we're talking about with contractor development and workforce development. The second, on the amendment of $25 million, the only clarifying question I would ask is, are we talking about 4 to 6 projects a year, or are we talking about the 75 that would just automatically trigger the $25 million threshold for a CBA? Because I'm under the understanding that it would be on a more or less 4 to 6, I mean, roughly those amount of projects
Yeah, I was
each year.
thinking 4 to 6 projects. I was surprised
Okay,
when
just
when
making
when I heard
sure.
75 projects. that
Yeah,
seemed
we're just
more,
making
yeah.
sure, because that wasn't, to my knowledge, what we were talking about, but we would more or less not have a huge opposition of, you know, as Willie said, getting that trigger online.
Okay.
I believe we currently have 4 projects over 25 million in the pipeline, and that 75 number was the grand total. Yeah.
So just to be clear, so far on the amendments, we don't lose you, Nate, and we get you, Willie. Is that a fair interpretation?
Just to be fair, this amendment just came to my attention this morning, so I haven't even shared it with our group, but I checked in with a couple quick people, and they didn't have any real heartburn, but as we continue this conversation until August, you know, we'll weigh in if we need to.
Great. Jeff, any thoughts?
Yeah, I will table my comment on the threshold with the CBA. I'll table that in because I want to have some offline discussions with some people before I make that. And as far as moving the threshold up, it is a benefit, especially for smaller minority companies and the way they operate and whether it's necessary for them to operate. I think that threshold moving that up is significant for those to be able to have consistency of workforce as well, because we don't necessarily have the longevity of workforce that we need in terms of in our pipeline that other contractors have. So that threshold at times is difficult for us to achieve, although overall we easily achieve that. But just on specific project specific, due to the nature of the work, at times meeting that threshold can be cumbersome.
Okay, very good.
Thank you for your feedback.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Just one quick added point. We're setting aside 1%, and I believe that for all projects, I believe that part of that money is supposed to go to technical assistance that would help contractors meet that threshold. I mean, that's the whole purpose of this, is to build the capacity. So to use that as an excuse as to why the threshold needs to be lowered, I think is flawed. I mean, just that's my personal opinion, especially when we're setting the money aside for that.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you. The next 3 invited testimony, John Jensen, Nicole Rappaport, and James Posey. Good morning, and as always, just name for the record would be really helpful.
Great, thank you. John Jensen. Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. I represent IBEW Local 48, that's the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. We are the regional electricians union here. We represent about 4,500 members, some of them whom are lucky enough to work right here at the City of Portland. So, and I would say that while not all of our members live here, almost all of them at some point in their career do work here, and even on some of these great city projects we're able to work on. First of all, to the spirit of the resolutions and the reason we're here today, I'd just like to, for our organization, fully support the concept and what we're trying to do here and the importance of this work. I'd also like to thank the city staff and everyone who has put in so much time and effort into this, and also all the other stakeholders who are here and in the room who care about this issue and who want to see more diversity in contracting and in our workforce. As to the specifics, I would support these resolutions with the amendment that Commissioner Saltzman mentioned. I think particularly the first amendment, which is a trigger to enact the CBA. And I think if we consider the recent success of 2 CBA projects here and the high achievement levels it attained, I think it's totally appropriate to have that trigger and continue to use that excellent CBA pattern that we've already established here at the city. As for the other amendment, I don't know, similarly, I just found that out today, and so I'd like to look at it a little more, but I think the interesting thing that brings up is it's my hope that this will be sort of a living document and conversation. I wouldn't be surprised at all to find other areas that we needed to fix and change to make this policy work like we want to for everyone. So having said that, I'm really grateful to be here, and thank you for all your work.
Great, thank you.
Good morning, Mayor Wheeler and to the commissioners. My name is Nicole Rappaport. I am General Counsel for the Operating Engineers Local 701. I went a lot back and forth with my prepared testimony and how I was going to present today, and at the end of the day, I decided that I'm here not just as General Counsel for Local 701, but also as a community member. The work that we've done on the CBA has been very important to me. I moved to the city of Portland 6 years ago. Many of us, I know, are transplants as well here. So I often get the feedback that, well, I'm just a transplant and I'm not invested. I moved here from the city of Detroit, which I understand gets a lot of bad press, we'll say. But one thing that my city, my home city, made me very proud of this past election year, when so many of us were recovering from this election year, was that the residents of the community voted on the ballot and passed a CBA ordinance. I was incredibly proud of Detroit, and having moved to Portland 6 years ago, I was looking forward to a very progressive city that I could settle down and create roots in. I bought my home 4 years ago. I've become very active in my neighborhood association, which is the Kenton Neighborhood Association. I think some of you were there at the vote a couple months ago, may have seen me there. So I really have made this my home, and I really am here today as a community member to support and advocate for the resolutions. But again, as Mr. Myers testified, as Mr. Jensen testified, without that trigger point that Commissioner Salzman proposed in an amendment, I don't believe that it gets this city to the progressive values that it claims to have. I'm very excited about the steps that we've moved towards. I think that, and I recognize that there have been tremendous moves from where we started several years ago. But I think there's still a few things lacking that we need to consider when looking at these resolutions. Mr. Reinhardt and Mr. James mentioned, and I fully agree, that there is an underutilization of minority and female businesses on large-scale projects in this city. I don't think any of us are disagreeing with that assertion. Where I think there is also an underutilization is with minority and female workforce. I think having a trigger point to a CBA helps to accomplish increasing minority and female workforce. Of concern for me is that I don't believe, I think it's the CEIC, as Mr. Myers pointed out, it's not yet dictated who's going to be on that. The CBA is very clear about which parties will participate in oversight. Not just which parties, but the fact that those parties encompass everybody involved. So you've got both the pre-apprenticeship programs, the owner, the unions, the contractors, all involved in working together with oversight together. I think that's the only way where you can truly accomplish transparent, neutral, and unbiased oversight to ensure that goals are being met. I don't think, as written, that the CEIP meets that. However, we're willing to concede this and agree to the CEIP for projects under 25 million. We would like the CBA to be applied for projects over 25 million. And again, the only way that I can personally support the resolutions would be with Commissioner Saltzman's proposed amendment. Now, getting to the second amendment with regards to the shift from 100,000 to 500,000, again, like Mr. Jensen mentioned, this is the first time I've heard of this, so I would need some more time to look into it, and it sounds like we will have some more time. But just from what I know this morning, my understanding, and to clarify what Mr. Meyer said earlier, my understanding is that the new state law is that for projects that are as a whole at 5 million and above, subs who are at 200 and above would be at the threshold requirement. So if the subs are at the 200,000 and the city is putting a 500,000 threshold on it, then that really means that the state, in my opinion, is surpassing the requirements over the city. So I think, as Mr. Meyer said earlier, I think as the city of Portland, we have an opportunity to surpass what the state is doing, or at least meet what the state is doing. I also think if we change it to 500,000, we might run into issues with that conflicting with the state's law. And again, I'd have to look more into it because this is all brand new to me. So where I am right now is as a community member and as general counsel for Local 701, I do appreciate the work that's been put into these resolutions. The only way I would be able to support it would be with Mr. Saltzman's first proposed amendment, and I'd have to look into the second one.
Very good. And just for the record, we'll keep the written record open, so as people have their conversations and do their analysis, we'd certainly welcome written testimony between now and when we actually take the vote on the resolutions. Commissioner Fritz?
Wouldn't we also accept amendments at the second read?
Absolutely.
And so then people could testify on the amendments?
Yeah, absolutely. Commissioner Udaley, do you have a comment as well? Okay. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioner, Mayor Wheeler. My name is James Posey. I'm a community member first, and I kind of chuckled because when you guys talked about community input, I wasn't even aware of this meeting and was not contacted. I think I've been a consistent presenter to this body with regards to this issue for over years. I go back as far as Bud Clark in terms of these proposals, et cetera. Given an opportunity just to really recently review these amendments, I must say there is some progress. I mean, I know you all expect me to say something negative about it, but at the end of the day, there is some progress. The whole idea of having an alternative bidding process in and of itself is quite remarkable and really a good thing. The whole concept with Jeff Moreland being a primary person working on projects that will allow someone to epitomize the success of having a community member willing to hire people of color and really demonstrate that this can be done and there is a process in which we can have success is really, really important. That in and of itself is a real piece that I think is worthy. But what troubles me about this process is you all's unwillingness to have complete transparency and a system that will keep us on track with where we really are standing with people, not only in the contracting area, but also in terms of the workforce. It's shameful for us not to be able to look in real time and see, for example, who are the operating engineers, not just on the apprenticeship level, but across the board. So we can actually project out how long it would take to get equity in that whole operating engineers, but they're willing to challenge you all about what we have in the system. But I'm not sure I've ever seen in any of these unions what their census is, who's there, where, how long, their mentoring program, and who's associated with what. This is intellectually untenable for us to be going down this road without having enough information. So when I was looking at these resolutions, the first thing I wanted to look at, and the first whereas is, where is the numbers? What's the baseline? How do we get there? And it's not there in any of these resolutions. So that's one of the things. I took the resolutions, whereas, and this is my version of a resolution, whereas in the past there has been virtually no consequence for failure. Dante James got up here and talked about, well, we got teeth. Well, it's subliminal, and it's New Delhi is laughing because, if there's no consequence for failure, then guess what? We ultimately are going to get the same results. And we've been doing this for about 40 or 30 years. And when you have a body of people, respondents to these issues, who keep going down the same road year after year, century after century, and there's no consequence, then believe me, they're going to keep doing the same thing over and again. So I was looking for something in these resolutions that really not only makes consequences, but really incentivizes the history of failure that we've had over the last several years. For example, if a contractor is doing well, why not give them that preference? Don't make it subliminal. Make it a highlight. Make it a privilege to have a contractor who really is hiring people from out of our community. So at the end of the day, this is not about the contractors or about the workers. It's about making communities whole. When you look back and see who's getting this work, is it people living in our community, or is it people living in Vancouver or Hillsborough? Or what? We have no fabric. When I get on my maps, I can tell what house is here or what house is there, who lives in it, and everything. But we can't tell whether the economic programs we're designing is impacting the community that have high rates of unemployment, housing issues, or et cetera. Are we making a difference by virtue of how we're structuring these programs? And I don't think we are. We don't have an economist lens. We don't have anybody looking at this to see whether or not we have like we do an environmental impact statement. Do we have an economic impact statement about how these policies are affecting our community, building capacity and making it grow? So I said all that to say this, Mayor Wheeler, you and I have had this discussion. I was proud when the city of Portland divested from South Africa. I was proud. We divested and we made a difference. If we do not divest from what we have here now, which is basically we have economic apartheid in this community. We need to take it on with that kind of seriousness in order to get this done. The other point that I've made to you all on several occasions is the patterns and pathway by which minority contractors enter this industry. It's not been fully vetted. We have trucking guys. I got a trucking guy back here now who is clamoring to get people into the trucking industry. And for years, we haven't had a process in which we could get apprentices in. This is the easiest way to get in. I started that way. I started with trucking. I went to paving. I went to excavating. I started because I didn't have anything. I started dirt poor. And so you have to build these pathways. And let me just tell you guys, don't expect the private sector out here to do what you're not doing in terms of your workforce, your heavy equipment operators, your laborers. If we looked at the transportation. I know you are familiar with this. In your shop, Commissioner Salzman, there's an opportunity to do mentoring and promulgate that to the private sector. You're not doing it. We've been arguing about that and trying to convince you all to utilize your own workforce to help feed the private sector out here, to help minority contractors to be a part of this system. It's not happening. So those are a couple of things that I want to mention. I want to say this. Whereas these issues are deemed to be so critical to the economic survival of our community for people of color as required, the impact statement, a CBO, score these projects to see if they meet the CBO, whether or not they critically are having an impact on our community. As much as I like Jeff Moreland and I see Colas' sign up there, it's not about them. It's not about them. Those guys, if they don't have no workers on that project, if they're not trying to improve the business climate in our community, forget them. I'm not out here trying to advocate for them as individuals. I'm out here trying to advocate as a community, and we'll all be better off if we pay attention to where this money is going. Follow the money. Finally, I want to just say the assumption that individuals with, like I said, with Moreland and those guys, we've framed this all around individuals and companies, but it is our community we're talking about. Let's pay attention. When we have these meetings and we're going to all these things, let's see if that money is filtering down. We're all on this so-called, what is it, a trickle-down kind of a thing. No one has no metrics on what we're doing to make our community better. You guys are the stewards of this stuff. That's why it's been all these years we've been doing this stuff, and we haven't made the progress we should because no one's holding us accountable. And I just plead that it's time. It's too, we're long since the time to take this seriously like we did in South Africa, the South Africa decision. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate your input on this. Let's see. I didn't see Andrew Colas walk in. Is he here? And Kelly Haynes, I wanted to give Kelly an opportunity to come up. If Kelly's here, there's Kelly. And then we'll get to open public testimony, and in a minute I'll ask you, Sue, how many people we have signed up. Good morning.
Good morning, thank you. Thank you, Commissioners and Mayor Wheeler, for the opportunity to speak on this very important issue. My name is Kelly Haynes, and I represent the Metropolitan Alliance for Workforce Equity, or MAUI. MAUI is a historic partnership between the carpenters, operating engineers, laborers, the building trades, other unions, construction contractors, pre-apprenticeship programs, and community-based organizations. MAUI works to promote economic opportunity and equity in workforce and contracting and develop practical strategies to address historic inequities in the region. And as you're aware, these partners developed Portland's first community benefits agreement to create a framework for shared community oversight and accountability, fair labor standards, and goals and resources to increase contracting and workforce opportunities for historically underserved community members. So as you may hear in other testimony, these policies have real impact for working people, women and communities of color who, through achieving goals on public capital projects, have the opportunity to have real careers in construction, grow their wealth, and lift themselves into high-skilled trades to grow small businesses into larger outfits here locally. These are critical policy decisions to consider as elected in the city. I'm going to outline the concerns and recommendations for MAUI and hope that they will help inform next steps and your direction as council. So the Community Equity and Inclusion Plan, as was presented earlier, was authored by a city work group and the city attorney. And it was, I think, a good effort to systematize equity efforts across city projects, and we do appreciate and support that concept. And I do think there was a lot of work put into it, and what was just articulated earlier, that this is completely overdue within the city, and the amount of funding that you guys have control over that can really help to positively impact and create opportunities for underserved communities in the region. However, we do see significant concerns regarding the CEIP and how it has come to be, or in its current form, including mostly issues of accountability, transparency, and enforcement. So I won't spend a lot of time on that, but I think just a couple of highlights. There's language around some loopholes in the workforce goals and standards that create exemptions based on a project-by-project assessment of the market availability of both contractors and workforce, and I just think that can be a huge issue in the implementation and how to ensure that those goals are upheld regardless. There's an advisory committee in the CEIC, but it's not, it doesn't have any enforcement power, and it meets quarterly, I think, as default, which we've learned from the Parks projects and others that that's not often enough in order to really address any issues that come up on the projects. The document also specifies that contracting diversity goals will not include specialty work based on a project-by-project assessment of the market availability of diverse firms to achieve the work. For the enforcement mechanisms, the liquidated damages are capped at $2,000 total for each contractor, and I think what we've seen in construction, unfortunately, is that some people will just write a check so that they don't have to deal with these kind of efforts. And I want to ensure that there's some sort of accountability and enforcement and penalties that are high enough that can help move the construction culture in the right direction. So for these reasons, although we do applaud the efforts of the city staff, we think there is still a lot of work to do for this CEIP to be successful. And so I'm going to switch over to the community benefits agreements. And I think even in the original resolution, which wasn't covered by city staff, there is language in there about applying a CBA to anything over 25 million in the original resolutions. I think the amendment is strengthening that language to really say, rather than considering a CBA, the bureau directors will be given more direction to actually apply a CBA. And we support that amendment for many reasons. The examples that were given by Mr. James around some of the highlights of the CEIP were great because they were taken from the CBA. So the bathroom facilities were in the CBA. The disaggregated goals around minority and women-owned utilization for contracting was also in the CBA. So I think carrying those things on is very important. What is different is that the CBA is a proven tool that worked on 2 city projects. So we actually saw those to their end, and 26% of the project revenue was earned by minority and women-owned companies. The goal was 18, and we hit 26%. Of the 68 contractors that were minority and women-owned on the CBA projects, 60% of them were non-union. So there was accessibility on the CBA for non-union minority contractors to work on it, and we always have valued that and seen it as a very important component to all of this, that it's not just a union-only program or model. For Kelly Butte, 50% of the apprentice hours were worked by minorities, 28% by women, 29% of the journey workers were worked by minorities, but I think you have all that data. So basically, the CBA pilots not only hit the goals, but double and tripled them many times. And I think that's why many people that I work with see the CBA as noteworthy and something to continue to pay attention to and to uphold. And if we're in the place now where it's at 25 million and above, we'll take it. But let's just keep continuing to work on that model as the proven model that's gotten really good results. This is critical in where community and labor want to work hand in hand with the city to ensure that historical and current disparities in construction and on large public projects can be addressed. So I think also that the proposed amendment would help give clearer direction to the city on applying the CBA on all projects 25 million and above, which could result in those efficiencies that were talked about earlier for large public projects by eliminating project-by-project assessments about whether to apply a CBA. And there's increased opportunity to apply a proven tool in the CBA to large capital projects, resulting in more earned wages and contracting revenue for women and people of color in the community. So I think if you can't adopt the proposed amendment, we oppose the CEIP resolutions and urge you to vote no, unless we can work on that amendment. So thank you.
Very good. Thank you. How many people do we have signed up?
Our count is 21 now.
21. So let's, I think that's all right. Colleagues, do you mind if we go till about 1:15?
1:15?
Yeah. Okay, let's do 2 minutes, and I'm going to be a little bit draconian today. I'm going to cut you off at 2 minutes, so everybody really, really try to get under 2 minutes so I don't have to cut you off. Thanks. Next.
First 3, please come up. Ramfi Villaturo, if I have your name reading that correctly. Nate Stokes, Ray Espana. They'll be followed by Bill Kowalczyk, Connie Ashbrook, Vanessa Enos. We
Good
have Ron
afternoon.
Fee.
And if you could just state your name for the record, that'd be helpful.
Hello, my name is Nate Stokes. I'm with the Operating Engineers, Local 701. I want to thank you for this opportunity to testify here or talk to you guys. I'm also wanting to talk to you about, as I was actually an employee on the Interstate Renovation Project before I became a representative of 701. So I was a project manager for a women-owned business that participated on that project and was very successful on the project. And I witnessed firsthand the process that had to go through tracking the minority women apprentices and to meet all the goals. It was a very successful project, and I urge that you take and adopt that amendment for the trigger point of the $25 million to address the CBAs on those projects. We would support the CEIP even though we feel that there's some flaws, because there has been 2 pilot programs that proven effective, but we will approve that CEIP as long as the amendments are addressed for the trigger point of 25 million. I do have, and it was brought up about the state requirement of the $200,000, the law that just was passed. I know the University of Oregon is in the process right now of negotiating project labor agreements in regards to that law. So I'd urge you guys to take a really close look at that new law that came into effect. That's all I have. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
I was just voted. Ray Espana. It's Mayor Wheeler, Commissioners. I've always appreciated the relationships I've had with the city members that I'm well aware of. Commissioner Daly, I've not had the opportunity to meet, but I've heard some very nice things about your work and effort. Today, I will be constricted to 2 minutes, and I think my message today is to really look toward in what I would call progressive, enlightened leadership that is clear on its expectations and its direction to city staff and to what it wants the community to understand. I think it's been said that we have been accepting a poor performance by city contracting, city hires, whatever. We could do better. I think you need to set that standard and an expectation that you expect it. The idea of moving toward equity is progressive. It's closing gaps, is removing, eliminating disparate treatments. Anything short of that is regressive in my estimation. So you need to be very clear of what you expect to happen. You spoke on other items of the issues of concern for tenant protections. This topic today is the other side of the coin, where one of the confronting issues in this community is affordability. So the ability to earn a living wage with benefit is the answer to increasing rents and the availability issue. So it has to be taken seriously. I would urge you to eliminate language that provides loophole. For example, if the opportunity is presented for a city bureau to accept or low bid versus alternative contracting, the selection of a low bid to me is regressive and should not be a possibility. With that, I'll just simply say that in my estimation, a publicly sponsored project that's owned by the city should have a very clear community benefit. And so I think the threshold conversation that the 25 million is acceptable. I support the alternative contracting methodology. So with that, I'm be respectful of time. And again, it's a blessing to see all of you again.
Likewise. Thanks, Ray. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Ranfis Studentino Viatoro, and I'm a Portland resident. Now, I'm not a developer, I'm not a contractor, and I'm not a union organizer, but I am a concerned citizen who's worked most of his career in working with the most vulnerable community, our immigrant community, for organizations such as CAUSA and Voice Workers' Rights Education Project. And I'm here today to support the CBA resolution, as well as, I think, some of the proposed amendments, as well as propose an amendment to the CEIP to better serve workers. And this is an amendment, language that I've proposed to the Housing Bureau for the housing bond. I've sent a letter to your office as well, Mayor, and I believe it's a good tenet of good stewardship around public funds, ensuring good business practices that are verified and protecting our valued workforce if we implement a good wage theft enforcement program. Wage theft can come in many forms, whether it's wages being withheld, deducted, not being paid the prevailing wage or minimum wage. It could be misclassifying a worker, employer cheating on the number of hours worked, employers failing to pay overtime or requiring workers to work off the clock, and so on. This is an issue within the city and the state. In a recent report from BOLI reported on the street routes, it's the second top complaint of wage claims in the state. I believe that there is a model that can best address wage theft. So one of the amendments, which I'm not going to go too deeply into this, I'll propose that language and their date, but I feel like it should strongly be required in the CEIP. Essentially, it's deputizing community-based organizations to verify the certified payroll. Let's verify the payroll. It's an easy step in the process. The city already receives the certified payroll from the contractors. We should verify that.
Very good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So folks, you've seen 2 minutes is not an easy threshold. Think bullet points, and we will absolutely accept written testimony. So if you have more details that you'd like to provide to the City Council, we will absolutely accept those via email. Next 3, please.
Next 3, Bill Kowalczyk, Connie Ashbrook, Vanessa Eames. They will be followed by Hannah Holloway, Matt Malmsheimer, and Pat Daniels.
Good afternoon.
It is afternoon, isn't it?
It is.
Good afternoon, commissioners and mayor. My name is Bill Kowalczyk. I work for Portland Youth Builders, where I ran the construction program for 15 years, and currently am a construction specialist on special projects. PYB is a BOLI certified pre-apprenticeship program. We're an alternative high school that serves very low-income youth ages 17 to 24. 50% of our students are people of color, 20% are women. I'm going to just blast through this really quick and submit my more detailed report. I want to start by focusing my comments on the partnership agreement and the community equity inclusion plan. I'll leave to comments by other colleagues. I think the partnership agreement is overall a good document. It codifies the key elements of our construction equity work, including construction apprenticeship requirements, community workforce recruitment and retention goals, subcontracting goals, and establishes the Standing Community Equity Inclusion Committee, the CEIP, to support city staff and contractor. I want to talk about that because this is important innovation. The structure of the committee delivers a model that can scale up for multiple contracts running concurrently. Before I go on, I want to mention I served on the LMCOC, and I currently serve on the CBP. So I have about 5 years of doing this work actually on the ground. So there are still bugs that need to be worked out. I feel like this is coming in and out. Can you hear me properly? Okay, excuse me. There's still bugs that need to be worked out, but there's been and that's been a concern of mine, bugs in the process of the scale up, but I think it's really still a good model. One thing that has been inconsistent in the testimony is whether there are monthly meetings or quarterly meetings. I read it very thoroughly. It appears there's monthly meetings. I believe that's critical to be doing this work in real time, so please check on that. The other thing, it appears that there are quarter reports to council, as I understand the reading in the plan. That's really critical because it was a huge absence of a back and forth rapport between the LMCOC and the City Council during the CBA.
And I'm sorry, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap it up.
Okay, well, one last comment here. I want to mention that the process has not felt inclusive to me. The process from last year when we provided testimony on the, as a result of the CBP evaluation. So I have to present a different opinion to what the city staff presented. It has felt really haphazard. There's been no clear committee that has supervised a process of interaction between this equity work and development of these policies and community input that I can see. I'm hoping the CEIC will be that mechanism. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Connie Ashbrook. I'm the recently retired Executive Director of Oregon Tradeswomen, and I'm excited to introduce our new Executive Director, Kelly Kupchak. Kelly, raise your hand and say hi to everybody. Mayor and Commissioners, I know from my meetings with you, from your leadership at the city, that you are completely committed to equity for all of Portland's residents, and for that, I thank you. Oregon Tradeswomen urges the Portland City Council to adopt the Maui amendments to the proposed resolutions, to consider extensive edits to the CEIP to make it more effective, and to take council action to strengthen the city's workforce training and hiring program. While the city workforce training and hiring program staff are working hard and doing their best, they need stronger tools and leadership support in order to administer an effective program. For instance, in the most complete snapshot report on the city's website, and that's this document right here, this is all the projects that were awarded in fiscal year 12-13. It had hours as late as 2016, so it's a little bit misleading, some of the way the data is reported. But of those projects, 42 projects, only 6 of them met all of the city's workforce goals, and 14 of the projects did not meet any of the goals, and only 11 met apprenticeship goals. So clearly we need some stronger scrutiny, enforcement, and tools to make the program effective. Equally concerning is that 16 of the 42 projects had 0 female utilization, and 15 projects had 0 African American utilization. If African Americans had worked in proportion to their percentage of the workforce, African American households would have made at least $288,000 more on these projects. In the interest of time, I won't read the rest of my testimony, but I do want to make sure you know, because of the apprenticeship data I'm submitting, that there is enough utilization of women and minority apprentices to fill all the city's goals. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
And I just want to thank you for a lifetime of commitment to and achievement of work in this arena. So thank you, Connie.
Thank you.
Yes.
Good
Hello,
afternoon.
my name is Vanessa Enos. I am a union journeyman laborer for the local 737. I am also a Northern Cheyenne member of the tribe and of Walla Walla, Yakima, and Pima descent. 3 years ago, I had my first dispatch, and it was for the Water Bureau. And before that, I attended the 7-week program of the Oregon Tradeswomen Pre-Apprentice Program, what gave me the tools to have the mentoring, the leadership, and the confidence to go out onto a work site, knowing that I had my OSHA 10 and I was ready for work. By going out there into that field, I was able to realize that I had a weekly income that was over minimum wage. I was able to move out of my transitional housing, which was Oxford for addicts. So I was able to leave that bed open for another addict who was suffering. So by having this development and this, living wage now, I also was able to have my health care kick in. The first 300 hours as a laborer, your health coverage kicks in and it's full coverage. And right then, the government had changed the laws of where if you weren't covered, you'd be fined $300. So I was able to cover that and not have to be fined. So with all, the benefits of working for the Water Bureau, it did change my life, dramatically. In the rule of law, I am more than a woman of color. I am a human being who deserves the opportunities and equal pay as a man. Projects like the Water Bureau had helped pave a new career, a new way of life, and a new independence. And that's how important this is to have women and minorities out there, because coming from a reservation, we are suppressed. And I was able to break that border down. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Next, please, Hannah Holloway, Matt Malsheimer, Pat Daniels. They'll be followed by Chris Montgomery, Joanne Hardesty, and Rob Martineau.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Hannah Holloway, and I'm the policy specialist with the Urban League of Portland. I'm here on behalf of the organization to oppose the adoption of the CEIP resolutions before you, unless they include the CBA amendment that we had discussed earlier, which would be a trigger for the CBA for projects over $25 million. The CBA template that we advocate for builds on the proven results of the city's own CBA from 2012. And as Kelly Haynes testified to earlier, it had proven results. It came in ahead of time, under budget, and exceeded diversity goals, sometimes as much as threefold. So I won't go over that aspect of it. But part of why it succeeded was because of the meaningful partnership, the shared accountability measures, and the transparency in the outcomes, which we feel are lacking from the CEIP resolutions before you. Why would you want to vote for a lesser policy? On the other hand, Portland has much to gain from a truly equitable workforce policy. The construction industry offers a type of long-term living wages that could remediate some of the racial disparities that we see in income and employment. Data from the Urban League's State of Black Oregon report shows that Black apprentices are terminated at a rate of 78% in comparison to their white peers at 45%. And as a city, we can do better on these statistics. It is incumbent upon the city to guarantee that public dollars are not used to promulgate inequities and discrimination. I will just conclude by expressing the frustration from our organization by what we see as a continuation of the city's call to community-based organizations such as ourselves to help wade through complex city issues to arrive at best practices solutions, only to have what is ultimately a status quo policy enacted. I'll just end there and say, please do the right thing and enact the CBA amendment with the CEIP. If you do not, we cannot support this resolution and urge you to vote no. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor Wheeler and Commissioners. My name is Pat Daniels, and I'm the Executive Director for Constructing Hope Pre-Apprenticeship Training Program. Constructing Hope is a program in Northeast Portland, and we target people coming from incarceration, minorities, and women. With that being said, when I look at your first initiative to support the CBA's over $25 million, we support that because, as everyone before me brought to your attention, how this supports people in our community. On the second initiative, where you're looking at lowering the cost on the projects from $100,000 to $500,000, I'm not sure about that, because as you're looking to build diversity in the city, how would that work in building diverse pre-apprenticeships going forward to your larger projects? So that's a question that I have. But I want to just say that we're all here for the right reason, which is building diversity and inclusion. I want to say I support a lot of the tracking and transparency that Mr. Posey presented. I've been working on these projects with the Maui team since 2010, and I have to say we have not seen a big change in the numbers when we break down and disaggregate the numbers. In your disparity study, it showed African American men being one of the lowest, and that was a need. And I can't see how we're going to change those numbers if we don't have accountability with the contractors for being transparent and inclusive, and having mentoring programs to make sure that once these people do enter the trades, programs like Oregon Trade Women and Constructing Hope provides mentoring to our groups. So we're the main supporters of bringing minorities to apprenticeships.
Very good. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mayor Wheeler, Commissioners. I'm Matt Malmsheimer. I'm here on behalf of the Pacific Northwest Regional Council of Carpenters. I've met with many of you over the years on this topic, and first, I want to keep my comments brief. Initial comment is, as written and as currently embodied, we cannot support the CEIP. With that said, we believe that there is a possibility to get to a point with, at the very least, the amendment that Commissioner Saltzman has proposed, that we could support something. We have our own concerns about thresholds, certainly. The CEIP only kicks in at $10 million. I don't know how that number was arrived at if we're talking 75 projects and $75 million in a year. It seems like there's an awful lot of construction dollars that aren't covered by a policy that should be in play. This is one of the concerns that we have. The other, I'll echo some of the issues that were raised by some of the earlier speakers, which is oversight is critical. The details on this are critical. Our biggest concern is that if we don't get this right, we're going to be looking at the same kind of results that the ECPC brought to light a little over a year ago, which is declining numbers, particularly of African Americans, situations where people show up, are sent home, get 2 hours of show-up pay, and that winds up being counted as utilization. Those kinds of things that if you do not have the right kind of oversight in place are just going to happen. So those are some of our great concerns. I look forward to working with all of you together going into the future with city staff and with our partners in Maui and the other organizations to get to the point that we can support something. I'll remain cautiously optimistic that we can do that, but it is going to require a lot from you as leaders and similar sorts of commitments that have been made. So.
Good, and thank you for the offer. We'll definitely accept it. To be clear, this is not a perfect document, and we knew when we brought it, it was not a perfect document, but calling the question has served an important purpose, which is to end the prolonged conversation which has been going on for years in light of the fact that we know the results haven't been good.
Yep.
And so we need to stop jawboning about it and get to the punch on how we're going to improve the accountability, improve the data collection, improve the standards, and hold people accountable for doing better. And so this process, I think, has been excellent insofar that now we're actually getting down to the brass tacks. One request I would have of you is we all agree we need more oversight and accountability. You have 30 days to help us define what that actually looks like. So I look forward to reading your suggestions and ideas on how specifically that could look, because I'd be very interested in that.
We'll be happy to do that. We met the request that you made of us of a
Yes, sir, you did, and I
document
appreciate
previously.
that.
We'll do it again.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your testimony.
Thank you. The next three, please. Chris Montgomery, Joanne Hardesty, Rob Martineau. They'll be followed by Matthew Jensen, Matt Morris, Lori Bauman.
Good afternoon. Thanks for your patience.
Good afternoon. I'm going to talk really fast because I'm going to try not to get a ticket. You might realize I've been here since 9:30, and as a member of the public, waiting for 2 minutes is a bit frustrating. For the record, my name is Joanne Hardesty, and today the hat I'm wearing is with the East Portland Action Plan. You're getting documentation that points out why the East Portland Action Plan is in opposition to the CEIP. I will just point out a couple of reasons of why that is so without actually reading the document, since I have very limited time. There are several reasons why this is wrong. Many people have mentioned that there's no accountability. We continue to contract with contractors who have figured out how to evade accountability over the years. Yet there's nothing that happens to them. We continue to contract with them. There is no penalty. If people don't make what they said they were going to do, we should have a period of time where the city of Portland will refuse to contract with that entity because they have not lived up to their responsibility. I also think the leadership of this CEIP is in the wrong place. It needs a commissioner having oversight of this, and having it in the Office of Equity and Human Rights and having other director-level people dealing with it is a totally inadequate accountability process. I believe in community benefit agreements because they work well. I do not think that the CEIP thing has too much benefit. I think if we have not been really clear about recruitment, mentorship, accountability, making sure, Commissioner Fritz, I still in my mind have this quote from you the last time we talked about contracting, and your quote was, we have contracted $4 million and people of color have got $1,290 some dollars. That happens over and over and over again. And I would like to see when reports come in front of the city council that they say how many black contractors were hired, how many Asian Pacific Islanders were hired, how many Hispanic contractors, because when we clump people of color together into a minority category, we get to hide very effectively the fact that we don't hire African Americans, that we aren't hiring enough women, and that we've done this like for 20 years. I've been through a couple of disparity studies here at the City of Portland. I've been here longer than the people that put this document together. James Posey and I have been fighting this battle for 20 years here at City Hall, and I can tell you that the CEIP has not had enough community engagement. And if you put a committee together that has equal numbers of contractors and people that want to be hired, there needs to be somebody else. Do you have people who are responsible for civil rights? Do you have other people who actually may have an opinion about how this process should work? And if not, what you end up with is people who are they're gonna trade so that they can get the contracts that they need. I also want to just put on the record that I think 25 million is too high a threshold. We have asked the city over and over again, help small contractors get insurance. That would be a good use of city resources. Help minority contractors get mentoring help. Make those contracts smaller so that minority firms can actually be the major contractor. We've had this conversation over the last 20 years, and what you've come up with is a very inadequate solution to that problem. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for your patience. Good afternoon. Either or.
Oh, please. Hello, my name is Chris Montgomery, Local 701. I came to Local 701 operating engineers about 3 years ago. As an organizer, I came on board, and I'm a product of what change has happened in our local. Working with apprenticeship groups and helping them, helping our group be more diverse in our apprenticeship programs, and working with groups like Constructing Hope and a few other community groups. We go out to schools and reach out to communities in order to build the more diverse workforce. I am in favor of the trigger of the 25 million. And I am also in favor for projects that, that use the CBA. I also believe in that we need the project labor for the CBA, excuse me, and for us to follow the state laws with limits. Though I may be in favor of the CIP, I do believe it needs more transparency and enforcement. I also am in favor for the First Amendment, although we need to take a closer look at the Second Amendment, as Commissioner Salzman said. I just want to, in closing, I hear a lot of emotion, and I hear a lot of things being said, and I know that you guys understand what everyone is saying, and how can I follow behind her? That's a tough job. But I'm going to ask you to please leave the politics and the backroom conversations and all that other stuff that do not benefit our community as a whole. It takes a village to create and bring this community together. And it's up to you guys to do so, and I really believe that you can do that in just honest transparency. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Good afternoon.
Thank you. I'm Rob Martineau. I'm president of AFSCME Local 189 and a city employee. I'm also a member of the DCTU bargaining team. I understand and share some of the skepticism expressed by those that participated in the pilot and have seen the process redirect into one that, in the words of Mr. Posey, leaves no consequence of failure. What I'd show you here are support cards for individual bargaining team, and why I do this is it relates to community benefits agreement. It relates to how we treat the communities, all of the neighborhoods, all of the stakeholders in our city, including those that work in your house. One of the reasons AFSCME supports the CBA model is the need for equity inclusion in all city contracts, and the DCTU is one of them. And my brother with Operating Engineers 701, my friends from IBEW 48, AFSCME 189, and currently the laborers 483 are all a part of that. Beyond the obvious subject of wages in contracts and things like this, we're focused on equity and how our proposals try to bring equity into the city and how it does not just the hiring, but also the contracting process. If I take off my union hat for a minute, I would stand for all workers, and that's union, it's represented and non. And no one should work full-time in this city and face housing insecurity or basically poverty. CBAs provide good jobs for the community. They provide jobs. I know the value of a good job and how it's changed my life to be your employee. This is something that CBAs help at the very base level, at the people that need to pay their bills, to keep the lights on, to keep a roof over their head. That is where the value is for me in representing workers in the CBA. We support and encourage this in workforce equity, workforce development, and would love to be a partner in how we can improve the mentoring in the city to help everywhere, in CBAs and throughout our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your testimony.
We have 9 more names. Matthew Jensen, Matt Maris, Lori Bauman, please come up. They'll be followed by Rob Akeley, Doc DeVorar, Scott Schaefer.
After you, Lori. Okay.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. We match today. Okay, so I'm here from my union, obviously. My name is Lori Bauman. I'm a LIUNA member. I'm a tradeswoman. I'm a resident. And I'm very passionate about workforce and construction. I have some points to hit from my union, but honestly, I want to tell you I'm a direct product of Oregon Tradeswomen, of a strong pre-apprenticeship organization. I'm a direct product of a apprenticeship. I'm a direct product of training on the job and opportunities given to me mostly from ODOT. I worked on heavy highway when I was out in the field. I'm now a representative for the union, and I wouldn't have those opportunities if ODOT at some point didn't look around and say, where are the women, right? And to save you background, just a real quick, I was never meant to succeed in anything in my life. I wasn't given the tools that a lot of people are given growing up. So the fact that I found Oregon Tradeswomen and the fact that I found a living wage and an opportunity through finding my way to middle class has been transformative. And at every chance, I would like to see more women, more people of color, more people from our community have these opportunities. Now that I'm a member of our leadership, I see a lot of people now that are working from out of town, a lot of companies from out of town. I'm seeing a lot of people get run off of job sites, and just like it's been pointed out, you know, there was a CBA that has been used in the past that was very successful. I know a lot of those people that got careers from those jobs. It was very good. I'm in support of the CBA and the 25 million minimum.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Wheeler and Commissioners, for hearing my testimony. And
First off, I want to, I know organization would support Mr. Saltzman's, Commissioner Saltzman's First Amendment completely. The second one, I personally feel it should be more aligned with the state law and for that to move forward. I've been a member of Labor's for the last 20 years and work as an organizer for the last 16 months. And for me personally, I was able to buy a house after 6 years in Portland, after 6 years of being a laborer. I was able to provide health care for my wife and children when my children were born and when they get sick. And I know that I will have a pension for me when I retire. It won't be a 401k subject to, Wall Street greed, but it will be there. As an organizer, I have met many workers out there that have getting wage theft on a daily basis. And this is something that needs to be taken into consideration. And I think a community oversight committee would be the best way to do that. I also see on a regular basis safety violations out there by non-union companies. And this isn't to condemn non-union contractors, but it's just to point that out. And there needs to be some kind of oversight for city contracts, because I'm sure everybody in this room would not want a tragedy on a city job. Also, I have personally witnessed African-American owner of a contract or a company who didn't have a single African-American worker on there, at least for the concrete phase of 2 big projects they had. And so I think that for city contracts, it's got to be worker-based, not just for the owners. So that's something to take in consideration also. So thank you very much.
Appreciate your testimony. Thank you.
And from Northwest Carpenters, Rob Akeley, Dak Devorar, and Scott Schaefer. And they'll be followed by Matt Hill, Samuel Murillo, and Roger Garcia.
Gentlemen, thank you for your patience. We sure appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Rob Akeley. I'm a representative for the Carpenters Union. I'm also a committee member for the Joint Apprenticeship and Training Committee, in which I interview all kinds of applicants, many applicants every month, many women and people of color and minorities. And I help them find work and work on your projects. In the past, since 2012, the CBA template has proven results and integrates lessons learned from past projects. The template is not broken. The current CEIP proposed language has lots of loopholes and is not very clear. The CBA has been the single best tool in the city's efforts to achieve equitable outcomes for our diverse community members. The current CBA partnership is a success and works well. I encourage the City of Portland to not pass the CEIP resolutions that are flawed and take away opportunities from our diverse community. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and the Commissioners. My name is Dale Dvorak. Sorry, maybe my writing wasn't so good. So I'm also a resident. I work for the Pacific Northwest Regional Council of Carpenters. I sit on the JATC. I'm also a Marine Corps veteran. And since I've been around, I sit on the JATC. I've worked out there in the community, trying to bring members to the community. And when I saw the CBA agreement and I knew that was in effect, I knew that that was a feat in itself. Bringing that to the table the years when it came into effect, that in itself was a feat. It was a huge movement in the right direction, mirroring the community to the job sites and trying the best. If we try to water this thing down with something like CEIP or any other process, and it doesn't mirror what that is, I mean, really, instead of bringing the threshold, we bring the threshold down. I think CBA should be around 5 million, in my opinion. So definitely, I am opposed to going through with that.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
Hello, my name is Scott Schaefer. I am a organizer with the Regional Council of Carpenters, also a member of Local 1503, and a native Oregonian. First of all, I'd like to thank you for having us all here today to be able to give you our opinions on this. I support the Maui and the CBA. The CBA is one of the best tools in the city's effort to achieve goals
of these equitable outcomes for the diversely historical excluded members of our community. I've seen over my many years in the trades, this helps find people a new path in life. It gives them a career and an overall sense of self-worth. A true partnership must be committed between the city, our community contractors, and our labor partners to make the CBA signatory agreement work for so many people, to help them get out of the tough situations that they have, poverty, and just, lock in their families and to be able to get that living wage. The city's known for its diversity, and we can't turn our backs on such an incredible labor pool for this amazing city, to let them show pride in what they can do to help the community. This resolution is going to be putting up roadblocks of the CEIP for the CBA. The construction trades, they work so hard to try and make this city, build this city, and such a boom we're having. This CBA is such an integral part to help them get a leg up in the community. I think that the best interest of the city and to its people is to make sure the CBA and the Maui is being looked at the correct way. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And then the last three, Matt Hill, Samuel Murillo, and Roger Garcia.
Thanks, gentlemen, again for your patience.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Matt Hill. I'm with the Pacific Northwest Regional Council of Carpenters and a member of Local 1503. In the interest of brevity, I won't beleaguer the points that my brothers have made before me. Just to mention that the CEIP seems to be a dilution of what the CBA was. I don't see that a lot of the language is actually beneficial to the heart of what the CBA was. My main focus is, from what I've seen, the 20% apprenticeship goal that was within the CBA doesn't appear to be there any longer. And that apprenticeship goal is, I think, a very, very important thing. Without the apprenticeship, I would not be the skilled craftsman that I am today. And we've all seen the projections of what the skilled trades are looking at in the future for as far as membership and that kind of thing. And having language in there with like these 20% goals, that increases the weight of the apprenticeship programs. It gets them out there and working.
Thank
you for your time.
Hi, Samuel Murillo, representative of the Carpenters Union. I am a Mexican. I am a product of what keeping unions accountable is. If you think about it, being a millennial from Hood River, Oregon, born in agriculture, I had poverty wage jobs through my parents. I didn't have a future. Now, as a representative of the Carpenters Union, I get to keep Doug Tweedy, my boss, accountable for having minorities and more inclusion and equity and women in the trades, which I appreciate him giving me the opportunity to be able to go out here and push these CBA agreements more and more. The CEIP is a watered-down version of just a lot of talk. I appreciate your comments about saying that you would like to meet with us. I want to hold you accountable for that, that we actually not just keep the $25 million threshold, that we lower it, because it's already been a proven fact that it's been victorious in the past. Why are we changing it? Why are you wanting to reinvent the wheel? I don't see no reason for it. But thank you for your time, sirs and ma'ams.
Thank you.
Good
The last
afternoon.
word.
Good afternoon. My name is Roger Garcia. I currently got transferred here from the state of Idaho. Also, thank you for letting me speak, and my brothers and sisters around me speak. Back home, you might be able to speak, but they just turn their head and they do what they want to do. I believe this is discrimination, not just to unions, but to minorities and people of color. I think you guys should be ashamed of yourselves. You guys make me feel like I'm back in Idaho. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, I think we're done with public testimony. Is that correct? So,
Mr. Mayor?
Commissioner Saltzman.
In the spirit, I heard a lot of positive testimony for my First Amendment, a lot of head scratching about the second one. in an effort maybe to move this ball down the line further, I would like to now offer my amendment, and so we can sort of frame the debate in the remaining 30 days. So I would like to offer the amendment that we require the CBA for projects over 25 million. I have that written out here for your consideration.
Very good. So we have a
So,
motion.
This puts me in a quandary. I have a plane to catch in in a very short time. I would have hoped to have had more feedback from the staff, from the city attorney. Most of the, if not all of the $25 million contracts will be in the utilities. Commissioner Fish is not here today. So I appreciate the amendment, and I most likely will support it, but I would very much appreciate if we don't vote on it today and have it at the next session.
So first, is that a second, not to vote on it today, but to put it on the table?
Yes, with that proviso, I'll be
so
happy to second it.
Very good. So we have a motion from Commissioner Saltzman, a second from Commissioner Fritz. We will not take the vote today.
Thank you.
I think there's more data gathering, information, and feedback that this council needs to receive prior to the conversation next month. Commissioner Saltzman, did you have a second amendment you wanted to put on the table?
Well, I am interested in still looking at the workforce requirement and raising that threshold from 100,000 to 500,000, but I do want to, we heard some interesting testimony today. I heard about a new state law that I wasn't aware of, so I want to do some more research on that.
Okay, and that's fine, and we can still bring amendments when we take this up the next time. So I just want to say this, thank you, everybody, from your testimony.
Oh, I'd like to,
Commissioner Udaley?
if you're going to wrap it up. Yeah.
Please, go ahead, please.
I know this has been a long conversation. This week I had heard we'd been actively discussing this matter for 8 years, but as Mr. Posey pointed out today, it actually dates back to the Bud Clark era, so that's at least 25 years. I am relatively new to this conversation. I first learned about our CBA pilots about a year ago, came and gave testimony last year in support of the CBA with the chambers packed to the rafters with other people also in support of the CBA. I know a lot of hard work has been put into the CEIP by city staff, and we want to move forward. I'm surprised the CIP left out some of the most critical ingredients of the success of the CBAs, as noted in the evaluation that the city commissioned for itself. But I also recognize I have a lot to learn on this issue, and I'm heartened that so many people in this room seem at least marginally supportive of the CEIP with some amendments. I also support Commissioner Saltzman's impending amendment, I guess. My questions also center around the rationale behind the $10 million floor and the $25 million ceiling, and why we decided to provide a choice for projects above 25 million, as well as concerns about oversight and consequences. I do not agree that a $2,000 cap on penalties for failure to comply is adequate. So I'm going to suggest that we consider having a work session on amendments that come forward. I think it would be really helpful to have the council as a body come together with community members and industry experts and city staff to work out these final kinks, and I'm really hopeful that we will come to a amicable conclusion sometime very soon. Thanks, everyone, for being here and for being so patient.
Very good. And Commissioner Fritz, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I do also want to thank everybody for this. Mayor Wheeler, you're the third mayor I've had the honor of serving with who has brought something like this forward very early in your tenure. And so it definitely is a gnarly issue. It seems to me that we're much closer together now than we were 8 years ago, and so I really commend you for that. I also believe that it's partly due to the work of Dante James in the Office of Equity and Human Rights. One of the reasons that I chose him to be the director was because of his experience with the Denver Light Rail project and contracting there. And also, I also want to commend Tom Reinhardt for your engagement. It does take both the engagement of high-level folks, including the mayor, to be able to get as far as we have done. So yes, there are still things to work out. I believe this is one that there is very little probability that anybody will be entirely happy with how we end up on it. But we are a lot further forward, and I think we can have some more constructive conversations to keep moving the dial and show that we can have accountability, transparency, and real equity and inclusion.
I'm going to let that be the last word, because that is even more eloquently than I will have stated. Thanks to everybody for sticking around. Thank you for your patience. To be continued. And with that, we are adjourned till 2 p.m.
And I just passed the president's on to Commissioner Udaly. She'll be back being president until I get back from visiting my mother.
You're excused for longer, but it should be up.